Chapter 533. Ouyang Shua's arrival was like a shot in the arm for Gue Ping Pass. Although the divine martial guards he brought with him numbered less than 3,000, they were a truly invincible force. They had experienced countless battles of various sizes and had not suffered a single defeat. Whether it was the ferocious River East warriors or the strange Chiyu blood guards, they did not make this army fall. Every member of the Divine Martial Guard had been promoted to the 12th rank. They had reached the limit of a soldier's rank. Their individual combat strength was comparable to that of a junior general or even a mid-level general. Ouyang Shua was confident that even with just the Divine Martial Guards, they could hold the pass for a day. Behind Gue Ping Pass, there were still 2 Mountain Barbarian independent regiments rushing over as reinforcements. In addition, the Leopard Tau Corps led by Han Xin was estimated to be only 2 days away from Gue Ping Pass. The Allied forces' attempt to take down Gue Ping Pass would most likely come to nothing. Ouyang Shua led his troops into the pass, and his eyes couldn't help but twitch when he saw the scene on the city wall. He saw countless mountain barbarian soldiers lying in pools of blood. It was impossible to count. Countless arrows were stuck in the corpses. The 4 Mountain Barbarian independent regiments that Ouyang Shua had planned had lost a pillar before they even received an official designation. Perhaps even the Allied forces would not have imagined what kind of damage they had done to Shanghai City this time. Obviously, the Mountain Barbarian soldiers had reached the most difficult moment. Thus, without any greetings, the Divine Martial Guards immediately attacked as soon as they climbed the city wall. They took their positions one by one, filling in the gaps left by the death of the Mountain Barbarians and fighting with the Allied forces. Even Ouyang Shua did not speak. He drew the Scarlet Knight sword from his waist and straightened his back. Even though he did not say a word, he was using the most direct action to boost the morale of the soldiers and encourage them to fight bravely. Marquis, King. Following Ouyang Shua's appearance, waves of cheers rose and fell from the top of the city wall. The soldiers shouted the Marquis name and fearlessly killed their way forward. The moment Ouyang Shua arrived at Gue Ping Pass, the blood-colored whirlpool above the pass shook. A huge blood-colored dragon suddenly appeared and suppressed the huge whirlpool. The blood-colored whirlpool immediately stopped spinning. Immediately, a formless wave of fate enveloped the warriors of Shanghai City. If someone were to observe carefully, they would be shocked to find that more than half of the tens of thousands of arrows shot by the Allied forces had quietly changed their trajectories, causing them to miss their targets. In a short period of time, the casualties of the soldiers decreased sharply. This was the manifestation of karmic luck. In the Battle of Gue Ping Pass, because of the timely appearance of the Divine Martial Guard, the situation of the battle took a turn for the worse. Although the Allied forces still had the upper hand, Li Mu no longer had the confidence to take down Gue Ping Pass before noon. In particular, the casualty figures of the Allied forces made Li Mu's heart tremble. The main force attacking the pass was the frontline army of 50,000 sword and shield soldiers. The 20,000 crossbowmen were only long-range support. As for the 10,000 cavalrymen, it was only a reserve force. In yesterday's battle, more than half of the saber and shield troops had been killed. In addition to today's battle, there were less than 20,000 saber and shield troops left. It seemed that they would not be able to form an overwhelming advantage over the city walls. On the city wall of Gue Ping Pass, in addition to the more than 2,000 Divine Martial Guards brought by Ouyang Shua, there were more than 2,000 barbarian soldiers left, nearly 5,000 in total. Li Mu really did not have the confidence to attack the 5,000 trump card troops of Shanghai City with 20,000 sword and shield troops. Not to mention that the enemy was the trump card of the trump card, even if it was an ordinary elite force defending the city at this time. The ratio of 1 to 4 attacking and defense was also an extremely dangerous boundary. Needless to say, the place they were attacking was a precipitous mountain pass. This can't go on like this. Li Mu shook his head and made up his mind. He glanced at the cavalrymen around him and issued a bloody military order. All 10,000 cavalrymen were required to abandon their horses and temporarily serve as infantry to join the siege. It should be noted that these cavalrymen were all elites trained by Li Mu, and they were best at cavalry battles in the wilderness. Now, they had to abandon their best war horses and climb ladders to attack the city. Li Mu felt very distressed at the thought of it. Unfortunately, the development of the situation no longer allowed him to be merciful. Li Mu was very clear that he had to maintain the numerical advantage over the enemy in order to capture the opposite pass. Otherwise, there was no need to mention anything. It had to be said that Li Mu was indeed a famous general. At the critical moment, he could be decisive and did things without hesitation. The cavalry troops were the personal guards of Li Mu. Naturally, none of them was a coward. After receiving the military order from the general, without any hesitation, they uniformly dismounted, pulled out the machetes at their waists, and marched forward in formation. 10,000 well-rested and vigorous cavalrymen suddenly threw themselves into the front line of the battlefield. The defensive pressure of the divine guards suddenly increased. What was worse was that the mountain barbarians' frenzy had ended. They began to enter a period of weakness, and their combat power was greatly reduced. For a moment, the whole line of defense began to shake again. Not to mention the mountain barbarians, even the divine guards were exhausted after a day and a half of long-distance attack. The current battle was just overdrafting and squeezing their physical strength in advance. It had to be said that the battlefield was indeed ever-changing. Both sides could change the balance of the war at any time because of a decision. Ouyang Shua's perception was so sharp that he could not help but frown when he found the abnormality of the battlefield. The decisiveness of the enemy's general was indeed somewhat beyond his expectation. At that time, there must be a new troop to replace the mountain barbarian soldiers. Otherwise, if the mountain barbarians were forced to hold on after the frenzy, it would only cause more casualties. Once all the mountain barbarians were killed, no matter how strong the divine guards were, it would be of no use. Obviously, Ouyang Shua's previous judgment was too optimistic. The general of the allied forces was really a difficult opponent. The problem was, where could he find a new troop now? Ouyang Shua frowned and tried hard to search in his mind, not letting go of any detail. Suddenly, a troop appeared in his mind. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shua became spirited and shouted, "Peiju!" "Yes, sir." Peiju had not left the city gate tower. Hearing the Marquis shout, he immediately rushed over. Go and bring the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army detained in the pass here and give them weapons." When the Imperial Guards captured Guiping Pass, except for those who died in the battle, the rest of the Taiping army surrendered to Shanghai City. There were about 3,000 people. They were temporarily detained in the pass, waiting to be reorganized by the Military Affairs Bureau. Now, this group of surrendered soldiers was Ouyang Shua's only hope. "Marquis, if we recruit the surrendered soldiers now, I'm afraid." Hearing this, Peiju looked a little hesitant. The surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army were different from other surrendered soldiers. Even if they surrendered, there might still be die-hard followers of Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan among them. Therefore, this group of surrendered soldiers had always been an unstable factor. They had to wait until the Military Intelligence Bureau carefully investigated and completely reorganized before they could be mobilized with confidence. And now was obviously not a good time to mobilize the surrendered soldiers. If they were not careful, it might have the opposite effect and lead to a greater tragedy. Therefore, before the Marquis arrived with reinforcements, even at the most desperate time, Peiju did not think of mobilizing the 3,000 surrendered soldiers detained in the pass. Of course, this also had to do with Peiju's lack of prestige. Ouyang Shua certainly knew Peiju's concerns. He waved his hand decisively. "We can't care so much now. Let's deal with the current situation first. I'll arrange a company of divine guards for you." As he said this, Ouyang Shua gave Peiju a meaningful look. Obviously, Ouyang Shua also had doubts about this, but he had to do it. The compromise was to arrange 100 divine guards to be responsible for monitoring the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army and take over their command. Understood. Peiju knew that the situation was urgent, so he said nothing more. The Marquis arranged him to deal with the surrendered soldiers, not only because he had no one else to use, but also because he was counting on his diplomatic skills. Whether or not he could pacify the Taiping soldiers would depend on Pei Ju. Ouyang Shuo did not have time to think too much. After making the arrangements, he turned around and joined the battle. This battle could be said to be the most difficult one Ouyang Shuo had ever experienced. Even when he confronted Chiyo's army, Ouyang Shuo was not forced into this situation. It had to be said that the allied forces had played a really good hand. Another half an hour had passed. The feeling of weakness in the barbarian soldiers became stronger and stronger. Even picking up weapons was a little difficult. At this time, the reinforcements Ouyang Shuo was expecting did not appear. Could it be that something happened when Pei Ju went to persuade the surrendered soldiers? Ouyang Shuo's heart sank. He was already prepared to fail. At this time, it was already useless to let the barbarians fight head-on. Ouyang Shuo had to order all the barbarian soldiers to retreat. The entire line of defense was taken over by the divine guards. For a moment, the pressure increased. Even Ouyang Shuo was no longer relaxed. He had no time to think about other things, because at every moment, there were several or even more than 10 soldiers of the allied forces pouncing on him. The Red Knight's sword in Ouyang Shuo's hand emitted a blood-red light. Strictly speaking, this was the first time the Red Knight's sword appeared, and it amazed the world. Unfortunately, no one appreciated it. The killing sword technique was skillfully executed by Ouyang Shuo. Perhaps, at this moment, Ouyang Shuo deeply understood the essence of the killing sword. The killing sword was a sword of the battlefield. Only the battlefield was its destiny. The peerless sword technique that had been buried in history reappeared in the world, sweeping up a monstrous massacre. Perhaps he was influenced by the killing sword. Ouyang Shuo's mind was surprisingly calm at this moment. He did not have any thoughts. He no longer paid attention to the entire battle situation, and he no longer thought about why Pei Ju did not appear. In his heart, there was only the sword intent of the killing sword. Any enemy in front of him was enveloped by the sword intent. To be continued. Chapter 534. P.S. Update. The red sun hung high in the sky. Guiping Pass was still filled with endless killings. At the center of the city wall, with Ouyang Shuo at the center, a marvelous scene appeared. In this clamorous and chaotic battlefield, Ouyang Shuo had actually entered into a rarely seen state of selflessness. The so-called selflessness was not really forgetting one's own existence. True selflessness referred to letting go of all distracting thoughts in one's heart and focusing on one's true self. Ouyang Shuo's heart at this moment was the killing sword technique. Therefore, in his heart, other than the killing sword, nothing else existed. It was this purity that allowed his mind, consciousness, and body to be in perfect harmony, allowing him to fully immerse himself in the study of the killing sword. A moment of comprehension in the realm of selflessness was equivalent to a day's work, or even several days' worth of work. More importantly, some of the content that was usually difficult to comprehend could be suddenly enlightened under the state of selflessness, and the natural moat became a smooth path. And this was called enlightenment. Thus, what anyone who comprehended the Tao desired the most was to be able to enter a state of selflessness. In this realm, although Ouyang Shuo didn't pay attention to the outside world, the scarlet firmament sword in his hand started to move instinctively. He was using the slaying sword technique. The killing sword's sword intent that was released from this could automatically capture any enemy's killing intent. As long as someone revealed killing intent towards Ouyang Shuo, they would automatically be locked down by the killing sword's sword intent. Because of this, no matter if it was a nameless soldier or a commanding general, so long as an enemy stood before Ouyang Shuo and appeared within his field of vision, they would automatically be enveloped by Ouyang Shuo's killing intent. Under the killing sword, there would be no survivors. Ouyang Shuo, who held the Crimson Knight treasured sword in his hand, didn't seem like an emperor, but like a god of slaughter instead. He moved about on the city wall while drifting indeterminately, and every single time he attacked, he would be able to take away the lives of one or even a few enemy soldiers. Under the envelopment of his sword insight, The enemy's every move was completely exposed to Ouyang Shua's senses. As time passed, Ouyang Shua became more and more proficient in using the killing sword technique. With the continuous slaughter, traces of blood chi began to gather on the Scarlet Knight's sword. The Scarlet Knight's sword was a sword of the Emperor Dao. Unlike the Sky Demon Spear, the divine sword itself would not devour the enemy's blood essence. Therefore, the wisps of blood chi could only gather on the sword god. The more it gathered, the denser it became. This scene was slightly similar to the scene of the nameless general practicing when Ouyang Shua was learning the sword scripture all those years ago. This meant that Ouyang Shua had truly touched the essence of the slaughter sword. Only a peerless general could possess such a frightening might and domineering demeanor that dominated the entire army. Who would have thought that it would appear on a noble marquee, on the battlefield, regardless of whether it was the divine martial guards who were still fighting or the barbarian soldiers who had already retreated to the side to rest? All of them let out blood-boiling shouts. To be able to serve such an unrivaled hero, what was there to worry about in life and death? The morale of the entire army soared. Kill him. The commander of the saber and shield troops of the allied forces was a burly man with a full beard. His eyes were as big as copper bells, and his face was fierce-looking. Because of his luxuriant beard, people called him the Bearded General. Seeing this, the Bearded General personally led his troops to surround and kill Ouyang Shua on the spot. In an instant, over 100 soldiers, including General Bearded, attacked Ouyang Shua in unison. Marquis, seeing this, the divine martial guards were alarmed. They wanted to rush over to help, but they were entangled by the allied forces. Be careful, Marquis. The barbarian soldiers wanted to pick up their weapons, but they found that they did not even have the strength to stand up. The aftereffects of going berserk had entered the most critical moment. Their entire bodies were sore and powerless. Ouyang Shua was about to die in the chaos. The bearded general revealed a sinister smile. Hearing how the divine martial guards called him, he felt even more proud. He knew that he had accidentally caught a super big fish. As long as he killed this person, this battle would definitely be won. The bearded general was already imagining the scene of receiving rewards in front of the Lord. In addition, the treasured sword in the other party's hand also made the bearded general drool. One look, and one could tell that this divine sword was extraordinary. If he could snatch it and offer it to the Lord, wouldn't it be even better? Thinking of this, the bearded general's expression became even more sinister. The large saber in his hand was ready to strike. At this moment, Ouyang Shua was still immersed in the enlightenment of the slaughter sword. He seemed to be unaware of everything around him, and only instinctively waved the Scarlet Knight sword in his hand. Kill! In an instant, hundreds of sabers came from all directions and covered Ouyang Shua's head. Marquis, whether it was the divine martial guards or the barbarian soldiers, their eyes were all red. At this moment, the corners of Ouyang Shua's mouth suddenly curved into a smile, as if he was happy, enlightened, and delighted. He slowly spat out 3 words, "Common people kill." Ouyang Shua spun 360 degrees on the ground, and the Scarlet Knight, sword in his hand, swept out. Suddenly, the evil blood chi that enveloped the Scarlet Knight sword suddenly broke out of the sword, turning into red sharp blades that shot towards the surrounding soldiers. In an instant, dozens of soldiers fell. Even the bearded general was seriously injured. The encirclement was instantly broken. Good. The worried divine martial guards let out a deafening cheer. Apart from the Marquis, who in the world could be a match for such divine power? At this moment, the soldiers' worship of the Marquis had reached an extreme level. The barbarian soldiers on the side even shed tears of excitement. The barbarian king of this generation was fixed. The new barbarian king was also brave and extraordinary, but also had wisdom and benevolence. What more could the barbarian tribe ask for if they could have such a master who was virtuous, wise, and brave? The soldiers cried tears of joy, and Ouyang Shua, his killing was far from over. The Scarlet Knight, sword in his hand, became brighter and brighter, stealing people's souls and taking their lives. 4 killing generals. Ouyang Shua's eyes narrowed, and the Scarlet Knight, sword in his hand, suddenly appeared in front of the bearded general without a trace. He pushed the sword forward and swung it. A fierce general of the generation had fallen. "General!" The surrounding soldiers of the coalition army couldn't help exclaiming. The death of their general greatly reduced the morale of the coalition army. On the contrary, the morale of the divine martial guards was high. Just like that, relying on Ouyang Shua's courage, the army miraculously persisted again. At this moment, a rush of footsteps came from below the city gate tower. The 3,000 surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army, led by Pei Ju, finally arrived. If one observed carefully, they would find that there were less than 3,000 surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army on the city gate tower. Even Pei Ju's body was splashed with blood. Obviously, the persuasion did not go well, and there must have been some trouble. Fortunately, the final result was still acceptable. With the addition of this batch of fresh troops, the defense line of Guiping Pass gradually stabilized. This batch of soldiers of the Taiping army was originally the garrison of Guiping Pass, so they were very familiar with the defense facilities inside the pass. As soon as they entered the battlefield, they smoothly got into the role without any adaptation. Seeing this, Ouyang Shua was relieved. The most difficult hurdle was finally over. With the divine martial guards as the center and the Taiping army as the support, the whole defense line was as stable as Mount Tai. This battle could be said to be full of twists and turns. The whole fierce battle lasted from early morning to evening. Both sides did their best, no longer leaving any leeway, and played all their trump cards. By the time the 2,000 mountain barbarians recovered and reappeared on the city gate, the outcome had been determined. The coalition army had completely lost the last chance to capture Guiping Pass. Against the sunset glow, Li Mu's expression was extremely gloomy, as if it was about to drip water. Originally, he was confident of winning the battle, but in the end, he ended up with a heavy loss of soldiers and generals. For Li Mu, capturing Guilin County was the most important military operation since he showed up in the wilderness. Before the attack on Guiping Pass, everything was so perfect. However, at the pass in front of him, Li Mu and the army he led were defeated. Retreat. Li Mu was indeed a peerless general. Although he had endless regrets, he did not lose his mind. He knew very well that it was already a delusion to capture Guiping Pass with the defeated soldiers in his hands. In that case, he might as well withdraw as soon as possible and rush back to Guilin County to make a long-term plan. Li Mu believed that with the military counselor's ability, there must be a solution. Under the setting sun, the army of less than 40,000 retreated from the front line. After a short rest, they gradually disappeared into the mountains along the rugged mountain road. This soul-stirring battle at the checkpoint came to an abrupt end, drawing an imperfect full stop at this point. On the city gate of Guiping Pass, watching the coalition army gradually disappearing, Ouyang Shua was lost in thought. Who is the commander on the other side? Marquis. According to the letter from the Military Intelligence Department, this person is Li Mu, a famous general from the Warring States period. He is not only the commander of the attack on Guiping Pass, but also the commander of the 200,000 coalition army. It was Pei Ju who answered Ouyang Shua. Li Mu, I see. Ouyang Shua looked up at the sunset in the distant sky and suddenly fell silent. His tall and straight body looked even taller and more imposing under the setting sun. Pei Ju looked at the back of the Marquis, feeling a little guilty. Just now, he had learned from the soldiers about the dangerous situation of the battle. He knew that if the Marquis did not show his great power, the consequences would be unimaginable. Because the reinforcements of the Taiping army came late, the Marquis almost lost his life. No matter in which territory, it was a capital crime. However, when the Marquis saw Pei Ju, he just said lightly, "You are here." Then, he threw himself into the battlefield. Not a single word of blame, not a single word of questioning. That was why Pei Ju felt more and more upset. The Marquis trusted him, but he almost screwed up. It was really shameful. Recalling what happened in the prison, Pei Ju still had a lingering fear. Back to an hour and a half ago, Pei Ju led 100 divine martial guards to the temporary prison on the first floor of the pass. Although it was called a prison, it was actually a small, closed military camp. The 3,000 surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army were detained here. To be continued. Chapter 535. In the prison of Guiping Pass. When Pei Ju stepped into the prison, he was faced with pairs of strange eyes. Although the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army were detained, they were not completely isolated from the outside world. They knew very well that Guiping Pass was facing the enemy's attack at this time, and the situation seemed to be somewhat unfavorable. The intention of the minister of Shanghai City suddenly coming to the prison at this critical juncture was thought-provoking. Everyone, Pei Ju looked ahead, and his voice suddenly became infectious. He said in a deep voice, "There's no need to hide anything. I think you all already know that Guiping Pass is facing the enemy's fierce attack." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sudden uproar in the barracks. It was one thing to hear it, but it was another thing to hear it from the mouth of this minister. Among the crowd, a trace of strange light suddenly flashed in the eyes of a few people. The situation is critical now. Guiping Pass may fall at any time. Pei Ju pressed his hands down to calm the uproar and continued. Once Guiping Pass falls, Shanghai City will naturally suffer heavy losses. I'm afraid that your lives will be in danger. I'm afraid you still don't know. Guiping County has been occupied by the enemy, and the Taiping army in the county has all been wiped out. Therefore, I advise you not to have any illusions. This group of enemies will not be merciful to you. Pei Ju's words were equivalent to extinguishing the thoughts of some people. Unfortunately, there were still many people who were not afraid of death, or rather, those who were loyal to the Heavenly King. When they heard that Guilin County had fallen, not only did they not feel a trace of grief or indignation, but a trace of joy flashed across their hearts. As the saying went, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Obviously, in the eyes of these loyal people, Shanghai City was their enemy. Pei Ju's eyes were very sharp, and he immediately sensed the strangeness in the crowd. However, these people had not come out to cause trouble, and Pei Ju could not deal with them, so he could only wait and see. Everyone, now is the time to prove your loyalty to Shanghai City. Put on your armor, pick up your weapons, and fight side by side with the marquee personal guards, the divine martial guards. For Shanghai City, and for yourselves. Pei Ju knew that time was tight, and he did not want to make a long and tedious speech. Only by linking this battle with the lives of the surrendered soldiers would they be able to arouse their desire to fight. As he spoke, the divine martial guard that came with Pei Ju had already opened the armory and distributed the armor and weapons to every surrendered soldier. After receiving their weapons, the aura of the 3,000 surrendered soldiers changed. The team, which was originally soft and weak, instantly had a hint of iron and blood, like an army that had experienced a great war. You make it sound nice, but you just want us to work for your master. Suddenly, a discordant voice came from the crowd, and the tone was filled with undisguised ridicule. One wave stirred up 1,000 ripples. That's right. Isn't it too late to think of us now that you can't hold on any longer? Now that they had weapons in their hands, these people spoke with more confidence, and their attitudes became arrogant. Exactly. Before this, they treated us like criminals. When did they ever treat us as their own people? Now that you're in trouble, you only remember that we're on the same side. How laughable. Bah. For a time, doubts about Pei Ju and Shanghai City rose one after another. When the divine martial guard saw this, they immediately pulled out the Tang sabers at their waists and waited. What, you want to silence us? Come on. With weapons in their hands, these surrendered soldiers really did have a trace of fear. In the crowd, there were people purposely trying to incite the army to cause trouble. Brothers, look, they need us now. That's why they're so polite to us. Once the battle is over, I'm afraid that people like us will be abandoned again. That's right. Instead of working for them, why don't we kill our way out and make a living for ourselves? Yes, kill our way out. They can't even protect themselves. Let's see how they can stop us. Under the instigation of some people, the crowd became restless. Some of the soldiers looked at Pei Ju and the others with malicious gazes. Seeing this, Pei Ju's heart trembled. If these 3,000 surrendered soldiers really wanted to cause trouble, just the 100 divine martial guards would not be able to suppress them. Most importantly, Pei Ju was still worried about the Marquis' safety. The longer this dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be. Thinking of this, Pei Ju's gaze suddenly became incomparably sharp. He suddenly stepped out from the crowd and loudly said, "What? You want to rebel?" Instantly, an oppressive aura surged towards the surrendered soldiers, causing their hearts to palpitate. The surrendered soldiers opposite him jumped in fright. They didn't expect that this seemingly refined old man would actually be so mighty when he was enraged. "I am rebelling. What can you do?" In the crowd, there were some brave men who weren't scared by Pei Ju. They stepped out and slashed at Pei Ju with their sabers. Seeing this, Pei Ju was not afraid at all. "How dare you?" The divine martial guard behind Pei Ju was enraged. With a roar, he instantly passed Pei Ju and arrived in front of this person. With a flash of a saber, the enemy's head fell to the ground. Blood spurted out and splashed onto Pei Ju's robe. In that instant, the entire army camp fell silent. Everyone present was stunned by the strength of the divine martial guard. They didn't even see when the enemy pulled out his saber before their comrade's head fell to the ground. This level of saber technique was truly superb. "Murder! Brothers, fight to the death with them." After the silence, there was an even louder uproar as the crowd became agitated. Seeing this, Pei Ju's eyes turned cold. He knew he couldn't drag on any longer and signaled to the divine martial guard around him. Seeing this, Pei Ju's eyes turned cold. He knew he couldn't drag on any longer and signaled to the divine martial guard around him. The divine martial guards received the order and quickly took out their bows and arrows. With lightning speed, they shot towards the crowd. The sharp arrows pierced through the air, not a single one missing. Miserable cries rose and fell one after another. Looking closely, they saw that the people who were cheering the loudest in the crowd were all shot and fell to the ground. This level of archery once again shocked the surrendered soldiers. 100 divine martial guards were actually able to intimidate 3,000 surrendered soldiers. Seeing this, Pei Ju spoke at the right time and said loudly, "Everyone, think about what you should do to benefit yourselves and your families. I don't want you to be incited by a few people with ulterior motives and lose your lives for nothing." Pausing for a moment, Pei Ju continued, "In this battle, anyone who makes a contribution will immediately be promoted and get rid of their status as surrendered soldiers. With the generosity of the Marquis, he will not be stingy with your rewards. One is a dead end that leads to hell, while the other is a broad road that leads to glory and wealth. Isn't it obvious which one to choose?" Coupled with the bloodstains at the scene, Pei Ju's words were undoubtedly very persuasive. The remaining surrendered soldiers were deep in thought. Without being incited by someone with ulterior motives, most of the surrendered soldiers were rather rational. This was especially so for the soldiers from Sunzhou Prefecture. When they thought about how their wives and children were still in the hands of Shanghai City, they immediately lost their temper. "Lord, tell us what to do. We will just do as you say." Finally, someone stood up and expressed his willingness to follow the command of Shanghai City. Seeing this, Pei Ju finally heaved a sigh of relief. He pointed to the divine martial guard around him and said, "You all saw them just now. They are the personal guards of the Marquis and the strongest warriors of Shanghai City. Now, they will temporarily lead you into battle and kill the enemy." The surrendered soldiers already had a direct impression of the divine martial guards, so they naturally did not have any dissatisfaction. Because time was tight, after hurriedly forming the formation, Pei Ju led them up the city wall. Because of this, the scene that Ouyang Shua had seen before appeared. On top of the city wall. Just as Pei Ju was immersed in his memories, an urgent shout woke him up. Reporting to the Marquis, "Urgent military news." A messenger hurriedly ran over. Ouyang Shua, who was standing on top of the city wall, heard this and turned around to receive the letter handed over by the messenger. The letter was sent from the Xuanwu Pass. The striking red color on the cover gave Ouyang Shua a bad premonition. Just now, he was standing on top of the city wall and looking into the distance because he was worried about the situation at Xianwu Pass. In a situation where there were no reinforcements, could the 5,000 barbarian warriors at Xianwu Pass hold the pass? To be honest, Ouyang Shua did not have the slightest bit of confidence. However, between the two passes, Ouyang Shua had to make a choice. The wilderness was that cruel. When he opened the letter, it was still a striking blood red. The entire letter was actually written in blood. To General Shi Hu, Xianwu Pass was suddenly attacked. We soldiers were ordered to defend it. However, there were too many enemies and we were outnumbered. The position was about to be lost. We have failed to live up to the marquis expectations and can only atone with death. General, there is no need to reinforce Xianwu Pass because I am already the last survivor in the pass. After sending this letter, I will be buried together with my brothers in Xianwu Pass. I only hope that in our next lives, we will still be brothers. Please send our greetings to the Marquis and pay our respects to the king, a nameless barbarian warrior. After reading the letter, Ouyang Shua's expression changed. He was filled with grief and indignation, and a trace of tears flickered in his eyes. The brave and fearless warriors were using sacrifice to express their loyalty. As the target of the warriors' loyalty, Ouyang Shua was powerless. He could only look on helplessly as his men courageously went to their deaths. For the first time, Ouyang Shua hated this game so much. He hated how realistic it was. Pass this letter to Shi Hu. Ouyang Shua's voice instantly became hoarse. He was indescribably tired. After passing the letter to Pei Ju, he turned around again and faced the distant horizon. At this moment, the sunset seemed to be especially bright red. Ouyang Shua's back suddenly seemed lonely and desolate. He wanted to mobilize the army of Shanghai City to break into Guilin County and start a life and death battle with the enemy. He wanted to take revenge with blood. Unfortunately, the conditions did not allow him to do so. At this moment, Shanghai City was really unable to support another war. Ouyang Shua could only endure it for now. To be continued. Chapter 536. Guilin County, Bushan City. Bushan City was located in the middle of Guilin County and was the largest city in the county. Outside the city was the world-famous Li River. Along the river, the scenery of Guilin was beautiful. The headquarters of the coalition army was located in Bushan City. As the sweeping operation in the county came to an end, the lords all moved to Bushan City. In the Battle of Zhaoqing County, the lords of the Southern Alliance followed the army, but in the end, they all committed suicide and returned to the city. From then on, the lords were extremely cautious when it came to following the army into battle. South Xiang City-State only had south of Rosy Cloud City, the city lord of Rosy Cloud City, and another lord named Guhenxiao. Guhenxiao was the lord of the famous General Li Mu. As for the North Sichuan province, because there was no city-state yet, therefore, only a dozen or so lords from the southern part of the province went to the battle. Among them, the representative was called Lord Shimin. Just like his name, it was rumored that Lord Shimin was a famous playboy in real life. After entering the game and relying on the support of his family, he managed to make a big name for himself. In the North Sichuan province, Lord Shimin could be considered a #1 figure. The lords gathered in Bushan City this time. In addition to commanding, the most important thing was to discuss the distribution of benefits after the battle. The huge Guilin County was like a piece of fat meat. After taking it, how to distribute this cake was very important. In addition, how to arrange the garrison of Guilin County after the battle was also an important topic. Since they had already taken Guilin County, no one would think of leaving after getting a share. And to manage Guilin County, they naturally needed to station a large army. Although this time the coalition army had caught Shanghai City off guard, but their fear of Shanghai City had not decreased at all. Instead, they would be more vigilant against this fierce tiger. It was reported that the North Sichuan province had already started to establish a city-state in order to more effectively fight against Shanghai City. It was precisely because of this that the coalition army wanted to immediately take down the two passes. As long as they held Xianwu Pass and Guiping Pass, Guilin County would be safe. On the contrary, if the two passes were lost, it would take twice the effort to defend Guilin County. On the morning of the 24th, the battle reports from the two passes were sent to the headquarters. Xianwu Pass was successfully taken, but Guiping Pass was held by Shanghai City. When the rulers received this news, they did not know how to feel. It was as if they had suddenly been stuck in midair, unable to go up or down, making them feel quite uncomfortable. The defeat at Guiping Pass made some lords tremble in fear. They were worried that when they woke up, the army of Shanghai City, they would fight to the death with them. Only one person remained calm. He was the city lord of Rosy Clouds City, south of Rosy Clouds. The governor's residence, West Courtyard. This courtyard was where south of the Rosy Clouds was staying. The courtyard was heavily guarded both inside and outside. In the main hall, south of Rosy Clouds sat in the middle. A middle-aged scholar sat below him. His face was fair and beardless, and he had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. That scholar was exactly the military counselor Li Mu mentioned. He was also a remarkable figure. This scholar was Li Li's Shan City. Zhang Liang, courtesy named Zifang, was an outstanding strategist in the late Qin and early Han dynasties. Together with Han Xin and Xiao He, they were known as the three heroes of the early Han dynasty. He was born in a noble family. His grandfather and father had been the prime minister of 5 generations in Yangdi, the capital of Han. Because Han was destroyed by Qin, Zhang Liang decided to rebel against Qin. He persuaded Liu Bang to make peace at the Hongmen banquet to preserve his strength. He also persuaded Xiang Yu's uncle, Uncle Xiang, to help Liu Bang escape. Later, he helped Liu Bang win the war between Chu and Han. He helped Empress Liu support Liu Ying to become the crown prince and was conferred the title of Marquis Liu. Zhang Liang was proficient in the ways of Master Huang and did not care about power. In his later years, he traveled with Qi Songzi. Liu Bang, the ancestor of the Han dynasty, commented on him, "A man can win a battle from 1,000 miles away. I'm not as good as Zhang Yang." This showed Zhang Liang's wit and strategy. Later generations respected him for his outstanding strategy and called him the sage strategist. Because he was called the sage of strategists, Zhang Liang's rating was higher than that of Bai Qi, Han Xin, and Xiao He. He was a sage-level historical figure. The fact that south of Rosy Clouds was able to get Zhang Liang's help showed how extraordinary he was. Although there were many sage-level figures like Jiang Shang, Sun Wu, Meng Zi, and Mo Zi who settled down in Shanghai City, they were not officials in the real sense. They were different from Zhang Liang. South of Rosy Clouds was probably the first lord to get a sage-level figure to work for him. It had to be said that this person was very shrewd and had hidden himself very well. It was no wonder that he could stand out in the Battle of Jiulu and become the most dazzling dark horse. In fact, during the Battle of Jiulu, south of Rosy Clouds had already triggered Sage of Strategist Zhang Liang's mission. It was not until the end of the Battle of Jiulu that south of Rosy Clouds experienced many twists and turns in the wilderness and went through many difficult tests before he truly got Zhang Liang's favor. The hardships involved were not something that a lord like Ouyang Shaw, who easily subdued historical figures, could understand. After all, whether it was on the battlefield or in the wilderness, as long as they were people that Ouyang Shaw fancied, they would not have to go through many twists and turns. The only exception was probably Jiang Shang. This old man had made Ouyang Shaw put in a lot of effort before he agreed to become the principal of Southwest University China Hall. Apart from him, there was also Fan Li. It was unknown whether the Black Snake Guards had found Fan Li or not. Zifang, we did not successfully take down Guiping Pass this time. Do you have any plans to remedy this? It was because it was not easy to obtain that south of Rosy Clouds listened to Zhang Liang's words and trusted him unconditionally. Hearing this, Zhang Liang smiled and said, "Don't worry, my lord. It is not surprising that we did not take down Guiping Pass. It is still within my expectations. After all, our opponents are not ordinary people." So, Zifang already has a plan? South of rosy clouds asked. Yes, it is not difficult to take down Guiping Pass. We only need to build another large pass at the entrance of Gillen County. This way, we can also achieve our goal of defending against the enemy. Great plan. South of rosy clouds was overjoyed. But regarding Xianwu Pass, my lord, you must not let your guard down. Zhang Liang changed the topic. Xianwu Pass is not a dangerous place to begin with. If we can easily take it down, the army of Shanghai City will naturally be able to take it back. Therefore, the most important thing now is to strengthen the garrison at Xianwu Pass. That makes sense. I will arrange it in a moment. South of rosy clouds nodded and said, the army responsible for sweeping through Gillen County has already completed their task. We can arrange for them to garrison at Xianwu Pass. Increasing the garrison is only a temporary solution. If we want to truly defend Xianwu Pass, we need to transform it into a sturdy fortress. Only then can we ensure that nothing goes wrong, Zhang Liang added. Building two fortresses at the same time will probably cost a lot of money. Hearing this, South of rosy clouds revealed a troubled expression. It was obvious that she had something she could not say. Zhang Liang was very smart. Seeing this, his expression changed. He had already guessed the gist of it. He asked, but do the other lords have any different ideas about the post-war plan for Gillen County? According to Zhang Liang's plan before the war, the northern Sichuan province and Xiangnan city-state had joined hands to take down Gillen County, while Shanghai City was unprepared. The main purpose was not to occupy territory, but to obtain a strategic buffer zone between Shanghai City and the two provinces. After all, for the lords of the two provinces, except for Rosy Cloud City, the other territories were still at the county level. For the time being, there was no problem of insufficient territory. Just within the provinces alone, there was enough territory for them to play around. Therefore, if it was just to occupy territory, there was really no need to make such a big fuss. Capturing Gillen County was the most fundamental consideration from a strategic point of view. After all, if Shanghai City successfully took down Gillen County, the territory of Shanghai City would directly border the two provinces. How could they allow others to sleep next to them? At the thought of such a ferocious tiger sleeping next to them, none of the lords of the two provinces dared to sleep in peace. It was precisely because of this that the war had occurred. If the Allied forces took down Gillen County, the situation would be completely different. If Shanghai City wanted to attack the two provinces in the north, they would not be able to pass through Gillen County. That way, the two provinces would have enough time to react and deal with the situation calmly. Apart from that, starting the war in Gillen County would also achieve the strategic goal of keeping the enemy outside of their territory, and the flames of war would not spread to the two provinces. This could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Therefore, before the war, the Allied forces had a clear plan for Gillen County after taking down Gillen County. That was to divide Gillen County as a whole into a common military area, and the revenue generated by Gillen County would all be used to support the Allied forces stationed in Gillen County. That way, they could not only support a large Allied force, but also not cause additional financial burden to the various territories. It was equivalent to spending other people's money to support their own army. It could be said that whether it was the layout before the war or the arrangements after the war, the whole set of plans was interlinked, and it was very operable and forward-looking. And the person who made this plan was the sage of strategists, Zhang Liang. It was this set of plans that moved the lords of Xiangnan City, and it also moved the lords of the North Sichuan province, represented by Lord Shimin. But what Zhang Liang did not expect was that when they really achieved the results of the war and picked the fruits of victory, in the face of huge benefits, some lords could not sit still. In other words, on this matter, the lords became selfish. In fact, before South of Rosy Clouds came to see Zhang Liang, they had already met with the other lords. The lords wanted to divide up the loot they had plundered in this battle, with each person getting a portion first. Because of this, South of Rosy Clouds found it difficult to build two strongholds at once. Chapter 537. My lord, you must be tough on this matter. Seeing that South of Rosy Clouds was a little hesitant, Zhang Liang immediately persuaded her with a firm attitude. Zhang Liang knew that if the two fortresses could not be completed in a short time, all the previous achievements would be rootless and difficult to sustain. I understand. South of Rosy Clouds nodded and said with a smile, "Don't worry, Zifang. I will find a way to persuade everyone." But her smile was a little forced. In fact, this is not a bad thing for my lord. Seeing this, Zhang Liang comforted her and said, "My lord, as long as you facilitate this matter, not only in the city-state of Xiangnan, but also in the territory of the two major provinces, you will have a certain prestige, which will be of great help to your future actions." Hearing this, South of Rosy Cloud's eyes lit up and she said excitedly, "Since you say so, even if I have to sacrifice my face, I will handle this matter properly." In the end, the more sophisticated a person was, the greater his potential ambition was. Zhang Liang's words hit the nail on the head of South of Rosy Clouds. Otherwise, how could Zhang Liang be called a master strategist? He could put forward different views according to the character and weakness of the Lord, so as to achieve the purpose of persuading the Lord to accept the advice. In comparison, Fan Zeng and Zhang Liang, who were in the same era, were really worlds apart. After the discussion, South of Rosy Clouds turned and left. Zhang Liang looked at the back of South of Rosy Clouds, and a trace of melancholy flashed in his eyes. In the end, is it still too small? In the hall, there was a faint sigh. That afternoon, there was a breakthrough in the talks of the coalition forces. No one knew how South of Rosy Clouds operated, but in short, the lords generally accepted Zhang Liang's plan and gave up the attempt to divide the spoils. The gold coins plundered in this battle, in addition to the pension for the dead soldiers, would all be used to build the two fortresses to ensure the safety of Guilin County. In addition, the lords had also reached an agreement on the number of garrison troops. Guilin County would maintain a standing army of 150,000. Among them, Xiangnan City-State would send a total of 100,000 troops, and Northern Sichuan Province would send 50,000 troops. The army would build an indestructible line of defense with the two fortresses as the core. As for the shortage of soldiers, part of it would be filled by the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping Army, and the rest would be shared among the territories. In order to reach this agreement, South of Rosy Clouds had no choice but to make many concessions on the appointment of officials in Guilin County. As the initiator of this war, Rosy Cloud City had almost zero control over Guilin County. Correspondingly, because Gu Henshao had contributed General Limu, he would have the biggest say in Guilin County. Even the prefectural governor was nominated and appointed by Gu Mark Shao. Although the lords did not brutally divide up Guilin County, they did not give up on exerting their influence over it. The transactions and entanglements involved were hard to explain in a short time. Fortunately, Zhang Liang's plan was basically implemented. November 24th, Guiping Pass. Around 2:45 in the afternoon, the two mountain barbarian independent divisions finally arrived at Guiping Pass. Unfortunately, the battle within the pass had already ended. What the mountain barbarian soldiers saw was only a battered and ruined pass, as well as the several thousand tombstones that had been added to the deep forest outside the pass. They were extremely dazzling under the sunlight. That afternoon, all of the mountain barbarian soldiers rushed to the cemetery to send off their comrades who had died in battle. Under the setting sun, this scene was especially shocking. Ouyang Shuo stood on top of the city wall, gazing into the distance. He did not move for the entire afternoon. The soldiers felt that ever since he learned that the 5,000 mountain barbarians in Xianwu Pass had all died in battle, the Marquis had suddenly become silent. He often gazed into the distance, thinking about something. This scene also affected the mood of the soldiers in the pass. The entire pass was immersed in a heavy atmosphere, unable to extricate themselves. Even the soldiers who had rendered meritorious service did not receive the Marquis's commendation according to convention. When Pei Ju saw this, a trace of worry flashed in his eyes. Logically speaking, as a leader, he should not show his personal emotions, especially his weak side, in front of his subordinates. This kind of behavior would be a heavy blow to the prestige of a leader, because for the soldiers, The Marquis was an omnipotent existence. Any trace of Ouyang Shua's abnormality would be interpreted by his subordinates, which would then lead to a crisis of trust. Needless to say, it was such a long period of melancholy. That night, Peiju finally could not bear it anymore. He hurried to Ouyang Shua's study, preparing to persuade him. For Peiju, this was where his duty lay. Under the dim light, there was nothing abnormal about Ouyang Shua's expression. In his hands, he was flipping through a set of blueprints. It was the blueprints of Gui Ping Pass. Old subject Peiju greets the Marquis. Seeing this, Peiju bowed slightly. "You're here? Sit." Ouyang Shua casually raised his head, his voice flat and tasteless, lacking the usual domineering air. "Marquis." Peiju hesitated to speak. Ouyang Shua's bad mood did not mean that his senses were not sharp. Finally, he realized that there was something wrong with this old official's state tonight. Or rather, something was very wrong. He put down the blueprints and said with a smile, "Grandpa Pei, if you have anything to say, feel free to say it." "Then this old subject will be bold," Peiju said. "Go ahead." Ouyang Shua nodded. "The dead have passed. The Marquis should put down his burdens, focus on the future, pull himself together, and become a role model for the entire army. A defeat should not have caused the Marquis to be in such dire straits." Peiju's words were a little blunt, so blunt that Ouyang Shua blushed with shame. Hearing this, Ouyang Shua revealed a bitter smile. "I understand what you mean, Grandpa Pei. However, some things may not be as you think. I'd like to hear the details." Peiju nodded. "Look," Ouyang Shua picked up the blueprints again and said, "I've been thinking about a problem for the past 2 days. The fall of Gillen County is already an established fact. The problem now is, how should we make up for it?" "Marquis, what do you mean?" Peiju's eyes gradually flashed with a glimmer. "Build a fortress," Ouyang Shua said resolutely. "With Gui Ping Pass as the foundation, we'll build a large-scale fortress that can rival Mulan Fortress." Ouyang Shua's thoughts were exactly the same as Zhang Liang's. "We can't determine if the enemy still has the ambition to invade Sun Prefecture. No matter what we think, Gui Ping Pass has become the only barrier to the north of our territory. This barrier was bought with the blood and sacrifice of tens of thousands of soldiers. We can't lose it." At this point, Ouyang Shua's emotions fluctuated a little. "I'm afraid we won't be able to take back Gillen County in a short period of time." A trace of melancholy flashed in Ouyang Shua's eyes, and he continued, "That's right. We have to station troops in the north of our territory. Since the Leopard Tau Corps led by Han Xin can't be stationed in Gillen County, let them temporarily set up a foundation in this new fortress." "That's feasible." Peiju nodded in agreement. "I want you to be responsible for the construction of this fortress. I wonder if you're willing?" Ouyang Shua asked. "That's exactly what I want." Peiju nodded. According to Ouyang Shua's orders, Peiju was originally supposed to go to Gillen County. However, the sudden fall of Gillen County suddenly made this old official unemployed, and his situation became awkward. To Peiju, the fall of Gillen County was also a stain on his reputation and shame. Therefore, Peiju had long wanted to personally erase this stain. Wasn't being responsible for the construction of the fortress the first step of putting his plan into practice? If he really had to take up a post in Shanghai City, Peiju would probably be a little unwilling. It had to be said that Ouyang Shua had a unique vision when it came to using people, and he often hit the nail on the head. "Should the new fortress be called Gui Ping Fortress?" Peiju asked. "No." Ouyang Shua shook his head, and a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes, and he said in a low voice, "In Gillen County, in front of Gui Ping Pass, Shanghai City suffered an unprecedented defeat. The glory of the Golden Dragon banner was tarnished for the first time. How could such an extraordinary humiliation be forgotten in a single day? Therefore, the new fortress shall be called Withered Fortress to commemorate this great defeat. If you want to avenge this, then pick up this withered glory." Withered Fortress. Peiju muttered these 4 words, feeling the weight of the weight. "Since that's the case, I suggest that we carve a huge monument of shame in front of the withered fortress to remind the soldiers stationed in the fortress not to forget today's humiliation. That's a good suggestion. Let's do that. Ouyang Shuan nodded in agreement. Late at night, the ruler and the official reached an agreement again. I'll take my leave. Peiju looked at the pitch-black night outside the window, stood up, and said goodbye. Peiju. Just as Peiju was about to walk out of the door, Ouyang Shua's voice came from behind. I will remember Peiju's warning today. Hearing this, Peiju turned around and smiled. Since the Marquis has such an understanding, I have nothing to worry about. The ruler and the official looked at each other and smiled. The next day, Han Xian led the Leopard Tau Corps to Gue Ping Pass. The three armies finally met at Gue Ping Pass. Ouyang Shuan naturally had complete trust in Han Xian. Even if the commander of the opposing army was the famous general from the Warring States period, he would not be able to win against Han Xian. Han Xian's arrival also meant that it was time for Ouyang Shua to leave. Originally, Ouyang Shua should have arrived in Tianjin City long ago, but because of this incident, he was delayed for several days. He did not know what kind of chain reaction this incident would have on Tianjin City. Seeing that there was no hope of taking back Guilin County in a short time, Ouyang Shua could only bear the pain and deal with the matter at hand. That day, Ouyang Shua, Han Xian, and Peiju had a secret discussion for the whole day. The next day, Gaia Year 2, November 26th, Ouyang Shua led the Mountain Barbarian Army, his face dark, on the road to Tianjin City. Chapter 538. The red sun hung high in the sky, and the wilderness was silent. Suddenly, a man's shout came from a small path on the side of the official road. Stop! Catch her quickly! Don't let this little girl run away. After a while, a petite woman wearing a floral dress staggered out from a small path. The floral dress was covered with mud, and there was even a scratch on the knee where traces of blood could be faintly seen. The young woman looked flustered. As she ran forward desperately, she turned her head to look behind her from time to time, as if there was a group of demons behind her. The people following behind the young woman were naturally not demons, but three men. They were not old, and the oldest was only in his early 40s. Judging from their appearance, they were dressed like farmers nearby. The only special thing was that these farmers had white strips of cloth tied around their heads and arms. Perhaps because she was too flustered, the young woman was careless and did not pay attention to the road under her feet. She tripped on a stone and staggered twice. In the end, she could not stand steadily and fell to the ground with a plop. Seeing this, the men behind her were overjoyed. Let's see how you can run now, little girl. As they spoke, the three of them sped up and were about to capture the young woman. A look of despair immediately appeared in the woman's eyes. She was already prepared to accept her fate. At this moment, a rhythmic sound of hooves suddenly came from the end of the official road. Hearing this, a strong desire to live burst forth in the woman's eyes again, and she shouted loudly, "Help! Help!" When the three men heard this, their expressions instantly became gloomy, and they immediately sped up, wanting to hurry and drag the woman into the small path that they had just come from. Unexpectedly, the sound of hooves arrived in an instant. They saw a group of well-equipped knights coming from the official road, and the leading knight was holding a golden dragon flag. When the three men saw the golden dragon flag, their faces instantly turned pale. Everyone in Shanghai City knew that the golden dragon flag represented the arrival of the Marquis. So King Unlucky. Seeing this, the three men were about to abandon the woman and flee into the forest while cursing. Unfortunately, at this moment, a sharp arrow pierced through the air and blocked their way. The arrow was stuck 3 inches in front of them. Presumably, this was just a warning. If they dared to take another step forward, the arrows would greet them. For a moment, the three men were so scared that they broke out in cold sweat, and their faces instantly turned pale. At the end of the day, they were just ordinary farmers. What knowledge and courage did they have? After a while, the leading knight arrived with his team. He looked down from above and shouted, "How dare you? How dare you abduct a civilian girl in broad daylight? One of the young men stood up and said, Sir, this woman is this lowly one's wife. She was disobedient and wanted to run away from home, so this lowly one caught her and brought her back. Oh, hearing this, the leading knight did not believe it. He turned to look at the woman who was begging for help and asked, Is what he said true? Don't worry, with the personal guards of the Marquis of Lien province, we'll naturally seek justice for you. Hearing this, the woman's eyes lit up and she said miserably, Sir, save me. Speak. This man is indeed my husband, but it's not that I'm disobedient. It's this damned bastard who wanted to use me as a sacrifice to be buried with the heavenly king. The woman replied, Buried with the heavenly king? The knight frowned. Tianjing will take care of the heavenly king's funeral. What does it have to do with you? This. Hearing this, the woman was a little hesitant. If you want to live, tell me the truth. However, the knight felt that something was wrong, and his expression became stern. Seeing this, the young woman disregarded the man's wink and said resolutely, I dare not hide it from you, sir. When the heavenly king passed away, the followers of the Holy Church spontaneously held a funeral for him. One of them was to choose a young woman as a sacrifice to be buried with the heavenly king. Speaking of this, the woman's expression suddenly became sad and indignant. She pointed at the young man who just spoke and said, This damned bastard, because there are no unmarried women in the village, he dared to target his wife. This woman had no choice but to escape from the village. Ridiculous. Hearing this, the knight flew into a rage. He knew that this matter was unusual. Guards, here, tie them up, interrogate them properly, and then hand them over to the Marquis. Yes, sir. Needless to say, this group of knights were members of the Divine Guard, the vanguard of the army. When Ouyang Shuo received the news, he immediately ordered the army to temporarily stop advancing and reorganize on the spot. The 3 captured men, including the woman, were handed over to the Bureau of Military Intelligence for interrogation. They were all ordinary people, so how could they withstand the torture of the Bureau of Military Intelligence? They all confessed in an instant. Things were just as the woman said. Throughout Xuanzhou County, when the followers of the God-worshipping church learned that the heavenly King Hong Xiuquan had passed away, they spontaneously offered sacrifices and sent the heavenly king off. This kind of behavior basically happened in the remote villages, so it was not noticed by the local authorities. What shocked Ouyang Shu even more was that according to their confessions, even some of the gentry and officials in the city secretly went to the villages to attend the funeral. It seemed that although Hong Xiuquan had died, the God-worshipping church that he founded had truly taken root in Xuanzhou County and had a strong foundation of believers. It would be difficult to eradicate it in a short period of time. This was undoubtedly a very dangerous signal for the rule of Shanghai City. Even Ouyang Shuo did not expect the remnants of the church to be so rampant. It seemed that he could not delay going to Tianjing City to oversee it. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo immediately decided to leave a company of divine guards in charge of thoroughly investigating this matter. The army sped up and advanced towards Tianjing City. In the Battle of Guiping Pass, less than 2,000 barbarian soldiers of the 1st Mountain Barbarian Independent Regiment led by Shi, who survived. Excluding those who were seriously injured, there were less than 1,500 people left. And the Divine Guard also suffered heavy casualties in the Battle of Guiping Pass. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo simply merged all the surviving soldiers of the 1st Mountain Barbarian Independent Regiment into the Divine Guard, thus restoring the Divine Guard's establishment of 3,000 people. Although these barbarian soldiers had not undergone special combat training, they were definitely first-rate soldiers. Merging them into the Divine Guard would not weaken the Divine Guard's combat strength. On the other hand, merging them into the Divine Guard was also the highest reward Ouyang Shuo could give these soldiers. Of course, the temporary designation of 1st Mountain Barbarian Independent Regiment also disappeared. As for the young General Shi, he was transferred to the 2nd Mountain Barbarian Independent Regiment and continued to hold the position of commander. Ouyang Shua did not mistreat the surrendered soldiers who had participated in the defense of Guiping Pass. He incorporated all of them into the Leopard Tau Corps, led by Han Xian. During the reorganization of Wuzhou County, the Leopard Tau Corps had a vacancy of over 1,000 people. Coupled with the several battles before and after, although they had not been seriously injured, there were still normal casualties of 5,000 to 6,000 people. Therefore, even after the Taiping soldiers were reorganized, the Leopard Tau Corps still had a vacancy of a few thousand soldiers. It was not only the Leopard Tau Corps. The Zhejiang Corps, the Imperial Guard Corps, and even the 1st City Guard Corps stationed at Mulan Fortress all had vacancies and urgently needed to be filled. These vacancies were naturally made up of the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping Army. In the Battle of Mulan Fortress, they had captured more than 120,000 soldiers from the Southern Road Army. In the Battle of Xuanzhou County, the three armies had captured more than 40,000 local garrison troops. They had defeated the Western Army led by Shi Dakai and captured more than 90,000 people. Finally, there were the 100,000 Taiping soldiers waiting to be reorganized in Tianjin City. Altogether, there were more than 350,000 Taiping soldiers waiting to be reorganized. This did not include the prisoners of war that would appear later when Bai Qi led the Zhejiang Corps to sweep through Jinan County. If Shanghai City wanted to defend its vast territory, it had to completely digest this batch of surrendered soldiers. The head of the Military Affairs Bureau, Du Ruhui, was already personally guarding Mulan Fortress. She was responsible for reorganizing the 250,000 Taiping soldiers detained in the fortress. Her main task was to eliminate some seriously injured soldiers, including some soldiers with low combat ability. Secondly, with the cooperation of the Military Intelligence Bureau and the Black Guards, she had to dig out the malignant tumors in the army. Among the 3,000 surrendered soldiers at Guiping Pass, there were many die-hard followers of the Heavenly King. It was not difficult to imagine how many dangerous people were hidden among the hundreds of thousands of soldiers. If it had not cleaned them up, how could they talk about reorganizing? During this time, the interrogation experts of the three intelligence agencies, the Military Intelligence Bureau, the Black Snake Guards, and even the newly formed Mountain Sea Guards, almost all gathered in Mulan Fortress. They would investigate the hundreds of thousands of surrendered soldiers one by one according to the clues. There was no doubt that this would be a huge, white operation, but they had to do so. Even so, Ouyang Shua could not guarantee that after this purge, the remaining soldiers were all trustworthy. There would definitely be some people hiding in the army. As long as it did not affect the overall situation, Ouyang Shua had the courage to boldly use this batch of surrendered soldiers. Of course, according to the usual practice, this batch of surrendered soldiers would not exist in an organized system. Instead, they would all be disorganized and reorganized into the three major armies. Some of the soldiers with relatively poor qualities would even be organized into the garrison divisions of various places. At the same time, the elite soldiers of the garrison division would be transferred to the field army. Therefore, this would be a systematic reorganization project that involved all aspects of the army. It would take at least 2 to 3 months, or even longer, to really reorganize all the soldiers. It was precisely because of this that Ouyang Shua could not launch a war against Guilin County. On the 30th of November, Ouyang Shua led his troops to Tianjin City. The fall of Guilin County caused the atmosphere in the city to become strange. At this point, the ministers of the Heavenly States suddenly realized that there was actually someone in the southwest who could challenge Shanghai City. For a moment, undercurrents were surging in the city. Fortunately, Yang Xiuqing had a strong will, and the situation was temporarily stabilized. But the arrival of Ouyang Shua forced this undercurrent to a dead end. Chapter 539, November 30th, Night, Tianjin City. When Ouyang Shua led his troops into the city during the day, the city was naturally lively and peaceful. Under Yang Xiuqing's iron fist, all the discordant factors temporarily lay dormant. According to Yang Xiuqing's arrangements, Ouyang Shuo received the civil and military officials of the previous dynasty, pardoned thousands of ordinary prisoners in the city, and distributed oil, rice, and other resources to the people in the north of the city, especially the poor. In short, it was as auspicious as possible. Yang Xiuqing could be said to be very familiar with this. This could also be considered as a specialty of heavenly state. When Ouyang Shuo saw this, he could not help but be amazed. After a busy day, this show only came to an end after the grand banquet. In the end, when it came to choosing a place to stay, Ouyang Shuo did not listen to Yang Xiuqing's arrangements for the first time. According to Yang Xiuqing, it was arranged for Ouyang Shuo to stay in the emperor palace that had already been sealed. But Ouyang Shuo politely declined this. The place Ouyang Shuo chose to stay was a side courtyard in the city. This side courtyard was the residence of the fallen general, Lin Fengxiang. It was quite imposing and did not disgrace Ouyang Shuo's status. Seeing this, Yang Xiuqing did not insist, because he could feel that the marquis was probably unwilling to stay in the emperor palace for some other reason. After the clamor, Ouyang Shuo finally had the energy to deal with official matters. That night, the commander of the Imperial Guard Division, the Tiger General Lin Yi, who was temporarily in charge of Tianjin City's defense, the head of the Black Snake Guard and the Military Intelligence Division in Xuanzhou County, and the young General Shi, who gathered at the side courtyard where Ouyang Shuo was staying. Obviously, this was an internal meeting of Shanghai City. Even Yang Xiuqing did not receive an invitation from Ouyang Shuo. In fact, before Ouyang Shuo arrived in Tianjin City, the two major intelligence agencies would gather relevant information and report it to Ouyang Shuo every day for him to read. As for the incident on the way to Tianjin City, it was enough to prove that the two intelligence agencies paid too much attention to Tianjin City and neglected other places, especially the layout and investigation of the villages. Through the information sent by the two agencies, Ouyang Shuo knew that there was currently a hidden force in Tianjin City that opposed the rule of Shanghai City. Among this force, there were military generals, important ministers of the previous dynasty, and even gentry, merchants, and other people of various social classes. The scope that was involved and the depth of its influence was truly shocking. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo had to get rid of this hidden force before Bao Shuya arrived at Tianjin City to take up his post. Otherwise, once Tianjin City lost its army, chaos could erupt at any time. The question now was what method to use. According to Lin Yi's opinion, he would naturally mobilize the army and start a bloody purge in Tianjin City. When Ouyang Shuo heard that, he immediately shook his head and rejected it. Lin Yi was a pure soldier, and it wasn't strange for him to think like that. After all, cleansing was also an option. But to Ouyang Shuo, this was only a last resort. Shanghai City easily conquered Tianjin City. There were advantages and disadvantages. Think about it. If Shanghai City attacked Tianjin City with a large army, Ouyang Shuo could naturally use the momentum of victory on the day the city was breached, and under the guidance of the Military Intelligence Department and the Black Snake Guard, he could directly cleanse the city. At that time, Shanghai City was the victor of the war, and no one dared to say anything. However, it was different now. Tianjin City had voluntarily surrendered. Facing people who had surrendered, Shanghai City naturally couldn't easily wave the butcher's knife. Otherwise, first, it would chill the hearts of the people in the city. Second, even for Yang Xiuqing and the others who were originally on Shanghai City's side, it wouldn't feel good in their hearts. It was precisely because of this that Ouyang Shuo was extremely cautious in handling the affairs of Tianjin City. That was why he was patient during the day and let Yang Xiuqing manipulate him to complete that big show. Apart from that, there was another problem that made Ouyang Shuo cautious. The two intelligence agencies did indeed have a list of the people of this force in their hands. However, as for whether the list was complete, even the two people in charge probably didn't have any confidence. Once the army started the cleansing, it would definitely alert the enemy and scare the other hidden enemies. In this way, it would only make them hide even deeper. Therefore, this cleansing had to be planned. The few of them discussed until late at night. and finally came up with a compromise. Needless to say, the Military Intelligence Department and the Black Snake Guard would continue to monitor the enemies and ensure that they could be taken down at any time. As for the hidden elements in the army, they would be dealt with by Lin Yi. For this reason, Ouyang Shua ordered Shi Hu to lead 2 independent mountain barbarian divisions and assist the Imperial Guard division. With the excuse of protecting the Marquis' safety, they would further strengthen their control over Tianjing City and completely take over Tianjing City. Especially for the 100,000 Taiping soldiers in the city, they had to be even more vigilant. They had to limit their range of activities and supplies in the future to reduce their threat as much as possible. Most importantly, Ouyang Shua wanted to summon Yang Xiuqing and the other generals of the Taiping army tomorrow to discuss the reorganization of the 100,000 soldiers. As long as the threat of the army was removed, the rest was just a minor problem. Therefore, the meeting tomorrow was a test for Ouyang Shua. He knew that there were at least 1 or 2 generals in the Taiping army who were loyal to Hong Xiuquan. It was just that they didn't find a chance to resist and had been pretending very well. Thinking about it, it wasn't an easy thing to mediate with such a group of opponents. On the other hand, in order to draw out the other hidden enemies in Tianjing City, Ouyang Shua thought of a method called luring the snake out of its hole. Luring the snake out of its hole? Lin Yi asked. Yes. Marquis, do you have a brilliant plan? Lin Yi asked again with a smile. Upon hearing this, Ouyang Shua smiled faintly and said, Think about it. Is there any place in Tianjing City that cannot be desecrated by Hong Xiuquan's diehard followers? The Sky Emperor Palace. Lin Yi and the others exclaimed in unison. Yes. Marquis, do you mean to burn down the Sky Emperor Palace on purpose to provoke Hong Xiuquan's loyal followers so that they will jump out on their own and then we can catch them all in one fell swoop? Lin Yi asked. No. Ouyang Shua shook his head and said, Wouldn't it be a big loss to burn it down? Strictly speaking, Ouyang Shua was also a bit greedy. He was also very familiar with the way to extort land. Coincidentally, Xuanzhou County and Zhun and County's reconstruction funds were tight, so Ouyang Shua naturally wanted to find a way to earn some money. As for the specific strategy, Ouyang Shua didn't reveal it. Early the next morning, Ouyang Shua issued the first edict since he entered Tianjing City. The edict stated that since Tianjing City was chosen as the administrative center of Xuanzhou County, there should naturally be a corresponding county office for the governor and the officials of the 4 departments to work. After investigation, the location of the Sky Emperor Palace was the best place to build a county office. Therefore, Ouyang Shua had no choice but to bear the pain and decide to tear down the Sky Emperor Palace and build a standard, more practical county office on the original site. Once the edict was issued, the whole city was in an uproar. The common people were only surprised by Marquis' heroism. As for Hong Xiuquan's loyal followers, tearing down the Sky Emperor Palace was no different from cutting off their only hope in the Sky Emperor. It was even more painful than tearing down their houses. Therefore, as soon as the edict was issued, people continuously petitioned for Marquis to retract the edict. And these people who jumped out naturally entered the sights of the Black Snake Guards. Not to mention Hong Xiuquan's loyal followers. Even Yang Xiuqing had doubts about Marquis' edict. After all, as an important minister of the previous dynasty, Yang Xiuqing knew what the Sky Emperor Palace meant to the people, especially the followers. If it was to build a county office, there was no need to go through so much trouble. Firstly, as long as the Sky Emperor Palace was slightly remodeled, it would be an extremely grand county office. Secondly, even if it wasn't remodeled, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with choosing a place to build it. After all, it was only a county office, not a palace. There was no need to pay too much attention to feng shui. But thinking about how Marquis had insisted on staying in the Sky Emperor Palace last night, Yang Xiuqing guessed that Marquis was really determined to tear down the Sky Emperor Palace. Seeing that he was going to Laizhou County to take up his post in a few days, Yang Xiuqing naturally didn't want to go against Marquis' will at this juncture, so she didn't raise any objections. But many people came to Yang Xiuqing, asking him to act as a lobbyist to persuade Marquis to retract the edict. Hearing this, Yang Xiuqing could only smile bitterly. Needless to say, all the petitioners were blocked outside the gate by the cold and merciless divine martial guards. They didn't even get to see Ouyang Shuo. Before tearing down the Sky Emperor Palace, Ouyang Shuo didn't have any intention of keeping the dozens of carriages of treasures in the Heavenly Peace Palace. He directly arranged for the Commerce Department to work with the various large chambers of commerce to evaluate the treasures and sell them off. Ouyang Shuo's actions this time were firstly because he didn't like luxury, and secondly, he was trying to minimize Hong Xiuquan's influence in the two counties. According to preliminary estimates, just the treasures taken from the Sky Emperor Palace could be sold for at least 300,000 gold coins. From this, one could see how luxurious Hong Xiuquan's life was. With this huge sum of money, the two counties no longer needed the support of the protectorate of the southern border. As for the palace maids and eunuchs in the Sky Emperor Palace, they were naturally dismissed as well. That afternoon, thousands of craftsmen began to dismantle the Sky Emperor Palace. Yes, dismantling. The superior wood, stone carvings, screens, and other materials in the palace were all carefully sorted out. It wasn't as wasteful as Lin he had imagined. Ouyang Shuo announced that he would organize an auction in Tianjin City for the superior wood and other old items of the Sky Emperor Palace. Everyone in the two counties could participate in the auction. They would buy these items of the Sky Emperor Palace back home as souvenirs. Even if they weren't souvenirs, the materials themselves were still rare and excellent. Seeing that he couldn't stop the dismantling of the Sky Emperor Palace, Ouyang Shuo believed that Hong Xiuquan's diehard supporters would definitely jump out and buy these items. In this way, he would be able to earn money and catch hidden enemies. It was killing two birds with one stone. Chapter 540. In the afternoon of the 1st of December, in Lin Fengxiang's mansion, Ouyang Shuo summoned the main generals of the Taiping army in the main hall to discuss the reorganization of the army. Before the meeting began, the atmosphere in the main hall was a bit heavy. First, not long after Marquis issued the first edict, he issued the second edict. The edict clearly stated that from that day on, Tianjin City would be taken over by the Imperial Guard Division and the two Mountain Barbarian Independent Divisions. The 100,000 Taiping army soldiers would all stay in a barracks and could not go out for no reason. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that the Taiping army had been given the cold shoulder. Second, the symbolic building of Tianjin City, the Heavenly Palace, was being ruthlessly demolished. Whether it was the generals who were close to Yang Xiuqing or Hong Xiuquan's hidden enemies in the army, they were all worried about it. Under such a background, Ouyang Shuo summoned all the generals, which meant something unusual. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all the generals had gathered in the main hall. They waited for an hour before Ouyang Shuo finally arrived. Behind Ouyang Shuo were two fierce generals, Lin Yi and Shi Hu. In addition, there was another person, Yang Xiuqing. Before summoning all the generals, Ouyang Shuo met with Yang Xiuqing alone, and the two talked for more than an hour. After the discussion, Ouyang Shuo came out to meet the other generals. What Ouyang Shuo did was, of course, to teach the generals of the Taiping army a lesson. He wanted to sharpen their spirit and make them realize who was the master of the current Tianjin city. Compared with the routine meeting on the first day, Ouyang Shuo suddenly became dignified. He was wearing the radiant armor and the red knight's sword at his waist, which added some killing intent to him. In the battle at Guiping Pass, Ouyang Shuo had a fortuitous encounter and entered an epiphany. The killing sword technique was instantly upgraded to the 4th level, familiar. He also comprehended the sword intent of the killing sword and the 6th move, life kill. As a result, the Azura murderous intent that Ouyang Shuo had accumulated in his previous life and the new murderous intent in this life were completely integrated by the sword intent of the killing sword. The newly formed killing chi was less bloodthirsty and more dignified, becoming even purer. Most importantly, Ouyang Shuo was already able to freely control this aura of slaughter, and he could control it at will. Normally, it would not show itself. Only when Ouyang Shua activated it would it pounce toward a specific person. At this moment, the 6 generals of the Taiping army in the hall felt the overwhelming pressure. In the blink of an eye, some of the generals broke out in cold sweat, and they couldn't help but be astounded in their hearts. In just one moment, Ouyang Shua had completely overturned the gentle image he had when he was receiving the civil and military officials the day before. Now, he was displaying his iron-blooded and unyielding side to the generals. Everyone, Ouyang Shua looked around and said, "All of you are generals and commanders, so you naturally know the importance of issuing orders. Since all of you have pledged allegiance to Shanghai City, the troops you lead should naturally be reorganized according to Shanghai City's rules. What do you think?" As soon as he finished speaking, the hall fell silent. The generals in the hall looked at each other, their hearts full of bitterness. The moment they surrendered, they knew that there would be a day when they would be reorganized. However, they did not expect that day to come so quickly and so suddenly. Unfortunately, they had no way to refute him. After all, it was common practice for the surrendered troops to be reorganized. Apart from Yang Xiuqing, 2 of the 6 generals were Shi Dakai's left and right deputy generals. The other 2 were the chief general and deputy general of the 50,000 troops stationed in Tianjin City. The other 2 were generals of the local garrison troops. Among the 6, the ones who had the least right to speak were the 2 local garrison generals. The total number of local garrison troops who had come to rescue the emperor was less than 30,000. Moreover, they were all ordinary soldiers, and their combat strength was worrying. Unfortunately, one of the 2 generals was Lin Chirong, a die-hard follower of Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan. Ouyang Shua had already decided to get rid of this person after the meeting. The last one was called Yang Fucking, but he was insignificant. If he was sensible, Ouyang Shua did not mind supporting him as the leader of the local garrison troops. Even though the current leaders were not of much significance, Chu Feng was still the leader of the army. Although Shi Dakai had resigned from the army and traveled far away, his left and right deputy generals still firmly controlled the 20,000 remnants of the West Army. The fact that this troop had been able to successfully protect Shi Dakai and break out of the encirclement amidst tens of thousands of enemies was proof of their strength. They were truly the cream of the crop. Shi Dakai's left general was called Hu Yihuang. He had already made it clear to Yang Xiuqing that he was willing to submit to Shanghai City. The Bureau of Intelligence and the Black Snake Guards had not found anything strange about this person, so there was no big problem. Hu Yihuang was the main reason why Yang Xiuqing could successfully take over the army. As for the right general, his name was Shi Jinji. His attitude was a bit ambiguous. Shi Jinji was not a die-hard follower of Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan, but a die-hard follower of Shi Dakai. More importantly, he was Shi Dakai's younger brother. Although Shi Dakai had voluntarily withdrawn from that shocking battle, in Shi Jinji's eyes, it was Yang Xiuqing who had forced his brother to leave. Therefore, Shi Jinji naturally held a grudge against Yang Xiuqing. Because of this, Shi Jinji did not have a good impression of Shanghai City. In fact, he even had a faint sense of resistance. As for Shi Jinji, Ouyang Shua's main goal was to rope him in. Firstly, Shi Jinji was Shi Dakai's younger brother and had extremely high prestige in the Western Army. It was equivalent to him taking over Shi Dakai's position. Secondly, considering the possibility of roping Shi Dakai in the future, Ouyang Shua naturally knew to leave a way out. As for the 50,000 troops stationed in Tianjin City, they were also an elite force. Otherwise, Hong Xiuquan would not have been at ease in handing over his headquarters to this force. The commander of the 50,000 troop stationed here was called Song Tianyang, and the deputy was called Qin Rigong. Song Tianyang was an old general and also a die-hard follower of Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan. However, this person was experienced and slick. He knew that things were out of his control. On the surface, he seemed to submit to Yang Xiuqing's leadership, but in reality, he had been secretly harboring evil intentions. Therefore, Zhang Tianyang was the most unstable factor in the 100,000 Taiping troops. As the commanding general of Tianjin City's garrison, his control over the troops was much better than Yang Xiuqing's. In addition, this person was an old fox. On the surface, he was unusually respectful to Yang Xiuqing, so no one could find any fault with him. He was very well supported by the soldiers in the army. If Ouyang Shua used force on Tseng Tianyang, it would probably cause a mutiny among the soldiers. As for the deputy, Qin Rigong, he was a trusted subordinate of Yang Xiuqing. It was precisely because of Qin Rigang's existence that Tseng Tianyang did not dare to lead his troops in rebellion. This allowed Yang Xiuqing to take over the Tianjin troops. It had to be said that the Military Intelligence Bureau's decision to rope in Yang Xiuqing was indeed a brilliant move. Only someone like Yang Xiuqing could not only scrutinize and seize power, but also have an underestimated influence in both the military and political worlds of Tianjin City. If it were anyone else, it would be difficult for them to do this. Reporting to the Marquis, seeing that Ouyang Shua was about to take control of the situation, the old fox, Tseng Tianyang, finally couldn't help but stand out. He asked gently, "Could the Marquis please tell me if there will be any changes to our duties after the reorganization? Will we still be able to control our respective troops?" Tseng Tianyang's words directly pointed out the two major weaknesses of the reorganization of the army. Neither of them could be omitted. As a commanding general, one had to be concerned about his own position. After the reorganization, it would be fine if he was promoted, but if he was demoted, then he would lose both his status and face. Apart from his position, the commanding general was also concerned about whether there would be any changes to his original subordinates. If he was appointed to a new army and did not have a few trusted subordinates, even if he was in a high position, he would not be able to live comfortably. Of course, the above 2 points were only for those generals who liked to curry favor and were passionate about fame and wealth. For generals like Han Xian and Di Qing, even if they were not put in an important position for the time being, it did not matter. They would not immediately think about cultivating trusted subordinates. This was because they were confident in their extraordinary abilities and had lofty ambitions. Obviously, these 2 points were not fated for the Taiping army. Therefore, Tseng Tianyang's words were very well received by the other generals. Even Hu Yihuang and Qin Rigong, the 2 generals who had expressed their loyalty, looked at Ouyang Shua with a face full of concern. Seeing this, Ouyang Shua exchanged a glance with Yang Xiuqing, who was in the hall. Tseng Tianyang was indeed an old fox. Unfortunately, no matter how cunning a fox was, it could not escape from the hunter's pursuit. Before this, Ouyang Shua had a secret discussion with Yang Xiuqing. The 2 of them had repeatedly simulated how Tseng Tianyang and the others would make things difficult for them during this important military meeting. Therefore, Tseng Tianyang's question was not beyond Ouyang Shua's expectation. Although Ouyang Shua was not a military genius, he had been hanging out with Bai Qi, Han Xian, and the other divine generals for many years. Therefore, he was not a stranger to military affairs. Seeing that the generals were provoked by Tseng Tianyang, Ouyang Shua put his hands down and smiled at Tseng Tianyang. This made the old fox panic, and his face twitched a little. "Everyone, even if General Tseng did not mention it, I would have given you an explanation. You should already know that the army of Shanghai City is divided into 3 levels: brigade, division, and corps. A division has more than 13,000 soldiers, and a legion already has 70,000 soldiers." Ouyang Shua paused for a moment. After they had digested it, he continued, "I promise that the 6 generals present here will all be given the position of division commander. As for the position of corps commander, it will depend on how much contribution you can make for Shanghai City in the future. If you want to convince the people in the army, you must have outstanding military achievements." When the generals heard this, they could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Their tense expressions also relaxed a little. One must know that even in the army of Shanghai City, a division commander was considered a high-ranking general. Although the number of soldiers among them had decreased, the quality of their troops had definitely improved. Even Tseng Tianyang could not refute this. After all, although Tsang Tianyong was now leading an army of 50,000 soldiers, he naturally could not be given the position of corps commander. No matter how thick-skinned the old fox was, he did not have the confidence to stand side by side with the three divine generals, Bai Qi, Han Xin, and Sun Bin. Chapter 541. As for the old subordinates that you are now leading. At this point, Ouyang Shuan noticed that the 6 generals, who had just relaxed, tensed up again. He snickered in his heart and said, "It's impossible to put all of them under your command. However, I can guarantee that half of the divisions that you are leading will be your old subordinates. What do you think?" The 2 promises that Ouyang Shuo made could be considered generous no matter which force it was. It was enough to show his sincerity. Therefore, the generals present seemed to have no reason to refuse. If the Marquis treats us with sincerity, we dare not to pledge our lives to him. Hu Yihuang and Qin Rigong, the 2 generals who were close to him, stood up and took the lead to express their loyalty. "We pledge our lives to the Marquis." Then, the garrison general, Yang Fucking, also stood up and expressed his position. Yang Fucking finally saw the situation clearly. With these 2 promises, he had nothing else to ask for. More importantly, the troops that Yang Fucking was leading now were less than 10,000 people. If he could really become the commander of a division, it would be equivalent to being promoted. How could he not be satisfied? Seeing this, Ouyang Shuan nodded in satisfaction. If the time was right, it was possible to arrange for Yang Fucking to become the commander of a garrison division. It could be considered as giving him wealth. Next, there were only 3 generals, Lin Shirong, Shi Jinji, and the old fox, Tsang Tianyong. The 3 of them looked at each other. Obviously, before they came, they did not expect such a situation. In the face of such generous conditions, if they dared to disobey, then their wild ambitions would be clear. After a while, the 3 of them had no choice but to kneel down and pledge their loyalty to Ouyang Shuo with bitter faces. Even so, from the expressions of Lin Shirong and Tsang Tianyong, outsiders could not see anything strange. Instead, they looked like they were grateful to Ouyang Shuo. Ouyang Shuo sat in the seat of honor with a smile on his face, watching the 2 actors perform clumsily in the hall. They probably did not know that their wild ambitions had long been seen through by the military intelligence. In fact, at this moment, Tsang Tianyong was sneering complacently in his heart. Tsang Tianyong did not expect that the Marquis in front of him would spend so much to rope in his old subordinates. How foolish. Tsang Tianyong couldn't help but sigh. Originally, Tsang Tianyong wanted to start a storm in Tianjing City and lead his troops to attack Lin Fengxiang's residence. He wanted to kill the so-called Marquis and avenge the Heavenly King. Now, Tsang Tianyong had temporarily given up on this idea, since the other party had promised him the position of a division commander and half of his old subordinates. In other words, he could take this opportunity to infiltrate the army of Shanghai City. This was a great opportunity. In this way, there were too many tricks that could be played. Whether it was to spread the doctrines of the God-worshipping church in the army of Shanghai City, to attract followers and expand their forces, or to betray Shanghai City and deal a fatal blow to Shanghai City during the war, they were all tempting ideas. Just thinking about it made him excited. In comparison, killing the other party once seemed rather insignificant. Thus, as far as Tsang Tianyong was concerned, this was no different from inviting a wolf into the house. Thinking of this, how could Tsang Tianyong not be proud? Tsang Tianyong and Lin Shirong exchanged a glance vaguely. Nothing needed to be said. If Tsang Tianyong and Lin Shirong were acting, then Shi Jinji's expression was a little strange. There was dissatisfaction and confusion. Unlike his clan brother Shi Dakai, Shi Jinji was a more ambitious young general. To be honest, before this meeting, Shi Jinji's impression of the Marquis was extremely poor due to his prejudice against Yang Xiuqing. His heart was full of resistance. Before this, Tsang Tianyong had vaguely probed Shi Jinji's thoughts. The old fox had vaguely revealed that he wanted to take advantage of the Marquis' arrival to start a military rebellion in Tianjing City. Shi Jinji didn't express his opinion towards Sung Tianyang's probing. This meant that he was somewhat tempted, but he just hadn't made up his mind yet. Sung Tianyang was a sly old fox. He immediately saw through Shi Jinji's thoughts. Recently, he had been interacting with him more and more frequently. Originally, Shi Jinji had almost been convinced by Sung Tianyang. Unexpectedly, today's meeting had greatly changed Shi Jinji's impression of the Marquis. To be honest, Shi Jinji had been rather curious about this Marquis whom he had never met before. He was curious just what kind of astonishing figure could command such a great army, able to wipe out heavenly country that was flourishing for a time. Shi Jinji had only caught a glimpse of the meeting with the officials yesterday, and at that time, Ouyang Shua had appeared amiable. For a general like Shi Jinji, that was a little off. Today's meeting at such a close distance had given Shi Jinji a whole new understanding of the Marquis. The man sitting at the head of the table was young, but no one paid attention to his age. He sat there, unmoving like a mountain. There was an awe-inspiring aura about him that no one dared to act presumptuously in front of him. It was the same for them, the generals. The Marquis didn't speak much, but the entire situation of the military meeting was already under his control. The two promises that the Marquis had made undoubtedly proved that he was broad-minded. He was a Marquis with true ambition, means, and charisma. Shi Jinji couldn't help but compare the Marquis with the dead heavenly king. With this comparison, it was clear who was superior. When he was in the army, Shi Jinji had occasionally heard his clan brother, Shi Dakai, say that he didn't seem to agree with some of the heavenly king's decisions. It was only because of military orders that he had to obey. Shi Jinji also felt that the heavenly king seemed somewhat gloomy and fake. To put it bluntly, he was a hypocrite. He didn't have the demeanor and bearing of a real monarch. He really couldn't be considered a wise ruler, especially when compared to the man in front of him. He seemed even paler. Therefore, Shi Jinji's heart was somewhat shaken at this moment. Was it really worth risking his future, his dreams, and even his ambitions just for the sake of his clan brother? That might not be what his clan brother wanted to see. Shi Jinji had a feeling that the army of Shanghai City was where his dreams lay. And all of this happened the moment Shi Jinji swore his loyalty. At this moment, Shi Jinji couldn't estimate how sincere his loyalty was, or how perfunctory it was. After the 6 generals swore their loyalty one by one, Ouyang Shua announced the details of the reorganization. The 30,000 local garrison troops, led by Lin Shirong and Yang Fucking, would be escorted by the 1st Brigade of the Imperial Guard Division to Mulan Fortress for reorganization. The 30,000 garrison troops would be reduced and reorganized into garrison troops, which would overlap with the other garrison divisions. The 20,000 troops led by Hu Yihuang and Shi Jinji would be divided into two. Hu Yihuang would lead the 10,000 troops westward to rendezvous with the Dragonxiang army that was sweeping through Zhenan County, where they would be reorganized. Shi Jinji would also lead the 10,000 troops to the Withered Fortress under the escort of the 2nd Brigade of the Imperial Guard Division to be reorganized. Ouyang Shua's arrangement seemed casual, but there was a deeper meaning behind it. Hu Yihuang was a trustworthy general, so he would go to Zhenan County, which was still in turmoil, to be reorganized. Shi Jinji, on the other hand, was wavering. Naturally, he would accept the reorganization of the Leopard Tau army. After all, the entire Sunzhou County was already under the control of Shanghai City. With the escort of the Imperial Guard Brigade, even if Shi Jinji had any ulterior motives, he would not be able to do anything. Moreover, looking at Shi Jinji's expression today, if Ouyang Shua were to meet him alone again, he would probably be able to completely recruit this young general. Ouyang Shua still cherished talents. Similarly, Qin Rigong would lead the 25,000 Tianjin city garrison troops and follow Hu Yihuang's troops to Zhen and County to rendezvous with the Dragonxiang army for reorganization. Accordingly, Ouyang Shua arranged for the 3rd Brigade of the Imperial Guard Division to be escorted. It was not that Ouyang Shua did not trust Qin Rigong, but he was afraid that the 25,000 soldiers would cause trouble. Therefore, he arranged for an Imperial Guard Brigade just in case. As for the old fox, Zhang Tianyang, he would naturally lead the remaining 25,000 Tianjin city garrison troops to the withered fortress for reorganization. This time, Ouyang Shua arranged for the 4th and 5th Brigade of the Imperial Guard Division to be escorted. As for Zhang Tianyang, Ouyang Shua did not intend to get rid of him in Tianjin City. However, once he arrived at the withered fortress, it would not be up to him to decide what to do with him. Ouyang Shua believed that Han Xian would not disappoint him. Thus, the 100,000 Taiping army troops were all transferred out of Tianjin City by Ouyang Shua. The time that Ouyang Shua gave the army was 2 days to prepare. These 2 days were the necessary preparation time, and it was also Ouyang Shua's last test of the enemies in the army. After all, once they left Tianjin City, it would not be so easy for them to cause trouble. Naturally, the generals had no objections to Ouyang Shua's reorganization plan. Thus, this temporary military meeting officially came to an end. Looking at their disappearing figures, the corners of Ouyang Shua's mouth curled up into a cold smile. Today, Zhang Tianyang and the others were so obedient, not only because they were afraid of being exposed, but more importantly, they were probably fooled by the 2 promises that Ouyang Shua made. They were probably thinking of using this opportunity to infiltrate Shanghai City, right? Unfortunately, what Zhang Tianyang did not know was that all of this was a poisonous bait that Ouyang Shua had meticulously set up. Once they were bitten, they would not be able to break free. The reason why Ouyang Shua was able to set up this trap was because Zhang Tianyang and the others did not know the essential difference between the military system of Shanghai City and that of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. In the previous Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, the commanding generals had a great deal of autonomy. They could cultivate confidence, appoint generals, and raise their own rations. In other words, as long as they obeyed the highest military orders of the Heavenly King, the commanding general could almost monopolize all other matters in the military, and he could decide the life and death of others with just a word. In contrast, Shanghai City had already formulated a set of strict military system, and layers of restrictions were placed on the commanding general. Chapter 542. Therefore, once Zhang Tianyang and the others went to the army, they would feel very uncomfortable. As for the appointment of the generals in the army, it was needless to say that Ouyang Shua was the one who made the decision. Even Bai Qi, Han Xian, and the other captains only had the right to recommend them. Generals under the rank of division commander were appointed by the military administration. Even if Zhang Tianyang and the others served as division commanders, they only had the right to recommend and could not interfere with the appointment of personnel in the army. The logistics of the army, including weapons and equipment, were under the responsibility of the Combat Readiness Division. Even if they were to communicate with the local authorities, they would have to communicate with the Combat Readiness Centers. Therefore, a division commander had no right to interfere with logistics, nor could he rely on this to wield power. In addition, compared to the loose military discipline of the Taiping Army, the military discipline of the Shanghai City Army was strict. The military conduct they carried out was a model, and they borrowed a lot from the modern military drill. The ubiquitous military judges would let a division commander understand what it meant by military law being greater than the authority of a general. Because of all of this, Zhang Tianyang and the others were bound to be unable to cause any trouble once they entered Mountain Sea City's army, and they would instead be trained to become standard soldiers of Mountain Sea City. When that time came, it would naturally be the time for Zhang Tianyang to leave. Needless to say, this move of Ouyang Shua's was truly vicious. Ouyang Shua was using an even bigger bait to minimize the harm that the Taiping army could do to Tianjin City. In this way, he could achieve a smooth transition of power in Tianjin City. Apart from that, Ouyang Shua's arrangement of the 100,000 Taiping soldiers to be divided into 3 groups to be reorganized was not an impromptu idea. It was closely related to the new structure of Shanghai City's army that he had been thinking about. No matter how the 350,000 Taiping troops were reorganized and compressed, and after deducting the 2 guard divisions and the number of casualties, they could still create at least 3 new legions and double the number of troops in the territory. Ouyang Shua had to consider how to establish their encampments and positions, and how to ensure the authority of Bai Qi, Han Xian, and Sun Bin, the three divine generals. That night, Ouyang Shua drafted an official letter. In this letter, Ouyang Shua combined his thoughts over the past few days and made another major adjustment to the structure of the army. And this adjustment laid a solid foundation for the future army of the dynasty. Under Ouyang Shua's order, the Xiang Dragon, Brave Tiger, and Tao Leopard armies were all upgraded to a higher rank army, known as the army. Every army had 2 to 5 legions. When necessary, the number of corps under the army could also be adjusted according to the actual situation. The commander-in-chief of the army had to be a divine general, or at least a general. Compared to a legion, the establishment of a group army was another transformation and advancement for the territorial army. This was because, compared to a legion, the number of legions under a group army was much more flexible. Therefore, during times of war, the military administration could flexibly organize the army according to different combat needs and strategic arrangements. For example, if the territory's future main assault was on the west, then when they were expanding their army, they could prioritize expanding the Dragon Stallion Army, which was responsible for guarding the western border. Apart from that, a group army and a theater of operations could coexist perfectly. Take the Lingnan Theater of Operations as an example. After the Brave Tiger Legion was upgraded to the Brave Tiger Legion, the Lingnan Theater of Operations Commander's headquarters would be the Brave Tiger Legion's headquarters. Similarly, the future commander-in-chief of the Brave Tiger Army would also be the commander-in-chief of the Lingnan War Zone. During times of war, it was even possible to establish a new army or corps under the theater of operations. As a result, the army of the entire territory was highly flexible and malleable. There were fewer commanders, and they were highly adaptable. Their reconnaissance, mobility, firepower, and three-dimensional combat abilities were all very strong. In the future, when the territory expanded its army, there would be no need to make large-scale adjustments to the structure of the army. Moreover, the territory was currently facing a perilous external environment. A single corps of 70,000 soldiers was no longer enough to make Ouyang Shua feel at ease. Only a group army could truly guard a region. If the group army had 5 corps, it would have 350,000 soldiers. Even if they were to face the threat of an entire province, they would not have to fear it. Thus, a group army was the final destination of the territory's army. Based on the current number of soldiers in Shanghai City, each of the 3 groups would have 2 corps. In other words, each group army would have 1 corps, which would be enough to absorb the 3 new corps. Take the Dragon Stallion Army as an example. After being upgraded to a group army, it would be renamed the Dragon Stallion Army's 1st Legion. At the same time, the Dragon Stallion Army's 2nd Legion would have a total of 140,000 soldiers. The commander-in-chief of the Dragon Stallion Army would naturally be Great General Bai Qi. At the same time, Bai Qi would also temporarily serve as the commander of the Dragon Stallion Army's 1st Legion. As for the commander of the Dragon Stallion Army's 2nd Legion, Ouyang Shua had set his sights on the territory's veteran general, Shi Wansui. As the territory's first historical general, Shi Wansui could be said to be completely loyal to Ouyang Shua. Moreover, he was an emperor-level general who had accomplished many military exploits. Whether it was in terms of ability or experience, he was more than qualified to be the commander. This promotion was the greatest reward for this veteran general. As for the position of commander of the Dragon Stallion Army's 1st Legion's 1st Legion that Shi Wansui had left behind, it naturally fell to Vice Commander Jiang Kai. It could be said that the outstanding native generals that the territory had nurtured had all ascended to the position of commander. Similarly, Han Xian would serve as the commander of the Leopard Army's 1st Legion. As for the commander of the Leopard Army's 2nd Legion, the famous General Zhang Han would serve as the commander. After the Battle of Giant Deer, Zhang Han had pledged his loyalty to Ouyang Shua. At the time, Ouyang Shua had frankly said that Zhang Han was more than qualified to serve as commander. It was only because the territory's army had been limited that Zhang Han had been given the position of commander. This promotion was the first time that Zhang Han had truly stepped onto a grand stage. In the end, Sun Bin would serve as the commander of the Stallion Tiger Army's 1st Legion. Of course, Sun Bin would also continue to serve as the commander of the Lingnan War Zone. As for the commander of the Stallion Tiger Army's 2nd Legion, the famous General Di Qing would serve as the commander. Both Shi Wansui and Zhang Han had been promoted in their respective armies. This would help to preserve the traditions and culture of their respective armies. For example, the Dragon Stallion Army's unyielding character, the Stallion Tiger Army's bravery, and the Leopard Army's nimbleness and dexterity. These rare traits had gradually taken shape under the influence of their respective commanders. Only Di Qing would become the first general to serve on a different army. Ouyang Shuo had made this arrangement for a reason. Of the original 5 commanders of the Stallion Tiger Army, only Fan Lihua, Chao Yin, and Bailey Shi, the 3 historical generals, were not up to the task. For this reason, Ouyang Shuo had no choice but to transfer Di Qing from the Leopard Army to the Stallion Tiger Army. Moreover, this was also a platform for Di Qing to display his talents. During the Battle of Zhaoqing County, Di Qing's ability to command troops had left a deep impression on Ouyang Shuo. Di Qing was not at all inferior to Zhang Han and Shi Wansui. This could also be considered a kind of coincidence. Di Qing's commanding style was more compatible with Sun Bin's, and he was known for his steadiness. Meanwhile, Zhang Han's style was very compatible with Han Xian's, and he liked long-distance raids. At this point, Shi Wansui, Zhang Han, and Di Qing had distinguished themselves from the other commanders, officially becoming the 2nd echelon under Bai Qi, Han Xian, and Sun Bin. The 3 of them had one thing in common. They were all emperor-level historical generals. It was clear that the future commanders would naturally be chosen from these emperor-level generals. Eli and Fan Lihua were among the best candidates. Of course, this wasn't absolute. For example, the young General Luo Shixin. He was one of the few historical generals who was still improving. Under Bai Qi's personal tutelage, Luo Shixin's future was still full of imagination. Moreover, among the great generals, Luo Shixin's elite cavalry division had made great contributions time and time again, earning him the reputation of being the vanguard in the army. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo didn't rule out the possibility of giving Luo Shixin a broader platform in the future when the time was right. After Zhang Han and Di Qing were promoted, Liao Kai and the Black Knights took over their positions as commanders. In addition, the 3 newly added legions needed 15 commanders. Hu Yihuang, Qin Rigong, and even Shi Jinji were all good candidates. In addition, the captured generals of the Taiping Army, including Li Xiuqing, Chen Yuqing, Xiao Chaoguwei, and Feng Yinshan, were all good candidates. The only thing that was uncertain was their loyalty. Apart from the 7 generals of the Taiping Army, Ouyang Shuo didn't have any ideas for the other commanders for the time being. He could only let Du Ruhui worry about it, and try his best to select the most outstanding brigade commanders. At this point, Ouyang Shuo's plan for the army's framework finally came to an end. With the expansion of his territory, Ouyang Shuo had no choice but to summon the generals together from time to discuss matters. Taking Sun Bin as an example, it would take him 10 days to half a month to get to Tianjin City, not to mention rushing back to Shanghai City. It would take a long time to go back and forth, which was extremely inconvenient. It was precisely because of this that the army groups needed divine generals to oversee them and lead them. Ouyang Shuo wrote an official letter about the army's reorganization plan and sent it to the military office through the courier station. The military office would be responsible for carrying it out. At the same time, he would also send a copy of the official letter to Bai Qi, Han Xian, and Sun Bin, telling them to cooperate with the military office in the corresponding reorganization work. The only thing Ouyang Shuo didn't mention in the plan was the reorganization plan for the Imperial Guard Division and the 3 Mountain Barbarian Independent Divisions. In fact, as early as when Qi Yu was defeated, Ouyang Shuo had already planned to upgrade the Imperial Guard Division to the Imperial Guard Division. However, this reorganization plan didn't have much to do with the Taiping Army's 300,000 soldiers, so Ouyang Shua didn't carry it out. Instead, he kept the several divisions by his side. Only after returning to Shanghai City would Ouyang Shua start the reorganization. After all, the three major armies had been promoted to army groups, so the Imperial Guard Division naturally had to expand to maintain Ouyang Shua's absolute authority in the army. Chapter 543. Gaia Year 2, December 2nd, Tianjin City. This was Ouyang Shua's third day in Tianjin City. The atmosphere in the city had changed. The demolition site of the Emperor Palace was in full swing. The precious wood was piled up like a mountain in the square in front of the Emperor Palace. In the square, groups of people gradually appeared to inspect the goods. Even the aristocrats and merchants of Sunzhou County and Zhenan County, who were even further away, rushed to Tianjin City after hearing the news to participate in this grand auction. Ouyang Shua immediately ordered the Department of Commerce to select some of Hong Xiuquan's personal items from the dozens of carriages of property to participate in the auction. Remember, only select those private and worthless items for auction. Ouyang Shua instructed the official of the Department of Commerce. Yes, sir. Also, set the price higher and advertise more enthusiastically. Yes, sir. The official of the Department of Commerce carefully agreed, while secretly wiping his cold sweat. He had a more direct understanding of the Marquis's shrewdness and meticulousness. Of course, in the words of Cui Yingyu, the director of finance, he was black-hearted and greedy. He was only a low-level official of the Department of Commerce and did not dare to be as domineering as Director Cui. On the other side, in the military camp in the west of the city, there was also a busy scene. The 100,000 Taiping soldiers were taking the time to pack their luggage. Tomorrow, they would embark on a journey to the designated location to be reorganized. As for some undercurrents in the military, they had calmed down after Ouyang Shua threw out the bait. The only accident was that last night, Lin Chirong, the garrison general of the local troops, got drunk in a restaurant and went to a brothel alone to have fun. Because he was drunk, Lin Chirong accidentally fell into a river in the city and unfortunately died. It was not until the next morning that the street cleaners found Lin Chirong's body floating on the water and immediately reported it to the government. The coroner of the Yamen said that Lin Chirong had drowned and the possibility of homicide was ruled out. Thus, the matter was left unsettled. When Tsang Tianyang received the news, although he felt that something was wrong, he had no way to verify it. After all, Lin Chirong was indeed an alcoholic. According to the confession of his subordinates, they did drink together last night. After the banquet, Lin Chirong abandoned his subordinates and left alone. Later, they received the news that he had drowned. In the end, Tsang Tianyang could only attribute it to a coincidence. How absurd! Tsang Tianyang felt very indignant about Lin Chirong's disappointing performance. How could Tsang Tianyang not be angry that he had lost an ally for no reason? What made Tsang Tianyang even angrier was that he went to test Shi Jinji again last night. This time, Shi Jinji actually directly refused, causing Tsang Tianyang to be dumbfounded. Cruel and unscrupulous. From Tsang Tianyang's point of view, Shi Jinji's refusal was a betrayal to the heavenly kings. As Tsang Tianyang cursed Shi Jinji, his fear of the Marquis deepened. Just a simple meeting had changed Shi Jinji's position. How could Tsang Tianyang not be shocked? Unfortunately, I already have no way out. In this life, I will definitely not let down the heavenly king's kindness. Tsang Tianyang was alone, sighing to the air. His expression was strangely lonely. Perhaps every bad guy had a past that no one knew about. Actually, from another perspective, in Hong Xiuquan's eyes, wasn't Tsang Tianyang the most loyal and reliable official? Often, when one standpoint was different, the evaluation of a person would also go to two extremes. Lin Fengxiang's mansion, Ouyang Shua's study. After dealing with the two thorny problems of the Heavenly King Palace and the Taiping Army, Ouyang Shua finally had time to inspect and meet with the civil officials of Tianjin City. Among them, the one that Ouyang Shuo valued the most was naturally Su Zhe. Compared to his brother Su Shi's boldness, Su Zhe was calm, reserved, and calm. It was this personality that allowed Su Zhe to go further than his brother Su Shi in the officialdom. Of course, deep down, the two brothers had something in common. The great writer Su Shi had once said this about his younger brother. Ziyu's literature is better than that of a servant, but the common people don't know and think that he is inferior. He is deep and doesn't want others to know. His literature is like his person. He is calm in the vast ocean and has the sound of one song and 3 sighs. In the end, his outstanding spirit cannot be lost. From this, it could be seen that Su Zhe was low-key and reserved. Su Zhe's knowledge was deeply influenced by his father and brother. He was famous for his prose and was especially good at politics and history. It was this specialty that caught the attention of Wang Engshi, who was the prime minister at that time and wholeheartedly wanted to carry out the reform. He was transferred to the Department of Regulations of the 3 departments. Su Zhe had a deep understanding of the green seedling law and other reforms that Wang Engshi implemented. Unfortunately, Su Zhe's theory was contrary to the ambitious Wang Engshi's thoughts at that time and went against the reform. Not long after, Su Zhe was banished from the capital because of his disagreement with Wang Engshi. His road to officialdom was bumpy. It was not until Song Shenzong died and Song Zhizong ascended the throne that Empress Dowager Xian Rin took charge of politics and wanted to abolish the new law during Wang Engshi's time, that Su Zhe was put in an important position again. In the end, he was promoted all the way to the prime minister. After that, Song Zhizong took charge and the new law faction gained power again. Correspondingly, Su Zhe, who belonged to the faction that supported abolishing the new law, was naturally banished. From then on, there was no chance for him to recover. From Su Zhe's life experience in officialdom, it could be seen that there were frequent party struggles during the Northern Song dynasty. Because of the Song dynasty's bureaucratic system, the status of the literati in the Song dynasty was higher. It was the golden age of the ancient intellectuals in China. They actively participated in political life. The political characteristics of the Northern Song dynasty were mainly weak and poor, and frequent party struggles were the main characteristics. Ever since Fan Zhongyan, the famous literati in the Northern Song dynasty, without exception, were drawn into the whirlpool of party struggles. Personal desires affected and determined their fates. It also deeply affected their literary creation. Su Zhe and Su Su were naturally unable to stay out of it. Perhaps it was because they were deeply poisoned by the party struggles that after appearing in the wilderness, Su Zhe kept a respectful distance from the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's party struggles. He had always maintained a neutral position between the Heavenly Kings and the other factions, handling government affairs in a low-key manner. Even during the contest between Shi Dakai and Yang Xiuqing, as the head of the Heavenly Kingdom civil officials, Su Zhe had always maintained his silence. Ouyang Shuo entered Tianjin City, and Su Zhe simply shut himself in. Until one morning, Su Zhe was personally summoned by Ouyang Shuo. Previously, when he delineated the 3 governors of Xuanzhou County, Ouyang Shuo did not consider Su Zhe. It wasn't that Ouyang Shuo was biased against Su Zhe or that he doubted Su Zhe's ability. In fact, with Su Zhe's ability as the Song dynasty's prime minister, there was nothing wrong with him governing a county. Moreover, during the Northern Song dynasty, the bureaucratic system was already extremely complete, and the training of officials was even more important. During the Northern Song dynasty, the Yamen's affairs were complicated, and the requirements for officials' ability were even higher. Therefore, compared to Bao Shuya and the other civil officials during the spring and autumn and warring states periods, Su Zhe's ability was not inferior. In fact, as early as when he found out that Su Zhe was an official in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, Ouyang Shuo had thought of a position that was most suitable for Su Zhe. That was the position of the director of the Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Public Security under the Administrative Office. Following Fan Zhongyan's transfer to Wuzhou County, Xiaohe became the director of the Administrative Office. The Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Public Security, which had previously been held by Xiao He, was still managed by Xiao He. Among the four major offices, the administrative office had always had a heavy workload. For Xiao He, it was extremely inconvenient for him to have multiple responsibilities. Xiao He had always used official letters to request the Marquis to quickly decide on a new director of the Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Public Security. The problem was the Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Public Security was actually related to the foundation of the revolution in Ouyang Shua's territory in the coming year. It was of great importance. So how could Ouyang Shua hastily decide on a candidate for the head of the Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Public Security? Su Zhe, who was both a writer and a prime minister, had a long history of learning and was an upright person, so he naturally entered Ouyang Shua's vision. He was a suitable candidate for the director of the Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Public Security. Other than this, the Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Public Security served the basic public business. It had nothing to do with party struggles, yet it urgently needed someone with insight to lead it. It was extremely compatible with Su Zhe's nature. It was because of this that Ouyang Shua had the confidence to convince Su Zhe to once again come out of retirement. Ouyang Shua had chosen to summon Su Zhe in the study instead of the main hall. This was also an expression of closeness. The meeting between the two could be said to be uneventful. For Su Zhe, the title of Marquis did not have much of a concept. The reason Shanghai City was able to attract Su Zhe was because of Fan Zhongyan's existence. In the Northern Song, regardless of whether it was in officialdom or in the literary world, Duke Fan had a special status. For Su Zhe, the fact that the Marquis could obtain Duke Fan's loyalty was a great recognition in itself, especially after listening to the Marquis's introduction of the Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Public Security. Su Zhe's emotions, which had just calmed down, were once again stirred. As long as a scholar was born in the Northern Song, there was no one who did not want to join the officialdom. For them, being an official was not to enjoy glory, splendor, and wealth, but to serve the people and display what they had learned. Just as Duke Fan had said in the story of Yang Tower, worry about the worries of the world first, and enjoy the joys of the world later. This sentence was the most vivid portrayal of the Northern Song scholars who cared about the fate of the country and the suffering of the people. They were willing to worry about the future and fate of the country, and they were willing to work for the people. Naturally, Su Zhe was no exception. For Su Zhe, being able to take charge of the Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Public Security was an opportunity to serve the people. Your humble servant pays his respects to the Marquis. At this moment, Su Zhe officially pledged his loyalty to Ouyang Shua. Name, Su Zhe, king level, title, one of the 8 great families of the Tang and Song dynasties dynasty. Northern Song identity, official of Shanghai City, occupation, official loyalty, 70 points commander, 35 force, 25 intelligence, 75 politics, 80 specialty. Wending, increase the territory's administrative efficiency by 15. Increase the territory's cultural index by 5. Increase the territory's incorruptibility by 15. Evaluation. Su Zhe, courtesy name Zio, Northern Songwriter. Prime Minister. This official has great talent and is well-versed in Confucianism. He is quick to work, but careful with his words. He is determined to follow the Tao, but complements it with skills. I have long heard of his actions, and he has gained great reputation among scholars. In the Cantonese, he has admonished the walls and advanced his words. In the Tang dynasty, he has enlightened many people. In the Wangyu, he has blown 10,000 misfortunes. Chapter 544. P.S. Update. Su Zhe's submission meant that Ouyang Shua had basically taken over the civil officials of Tianjin. It was precisely because Suzhou had not wanted to be involved in the factional struggles of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom and had instead focused on government affairs that he had established an extremely high prestige among the civil officials of the previous dynasty. True scholars were all willing to make friends with Suzhou. Thus, Suzhou's recognition of Shanghai City naturally led to a group of civil officials. That afternoon, Ouyang Shua issued his third edict since taking over Tianjin City. The content of the edict was aimed at the civil officials of the two commanderies. The officials of the previous dynasty, with the exception of those marked and blacklisted by the two intelligence agencies, would all find a place in the county government that was about to be established. Of course, all the officials of the two commanderies would follow the example of Wuzhou Commandery. They would all be dismissed and then rehired by the administrative office. This would thoroughly cleanse the original officialdom. The only good thing about the fall of Guilin Commandery was that Xiao would no longer need to make up the numbers. The 1,000 officials prepared by the administrative office would be enough to operate Xuanzhou Commandery and Zhenan Commandery. On the third day of the 12th month, the 100,000 Taiping soldiers left Tianjin City. With the departure of the Taiping army, the situation in Tianjin City became increasingly clear. At least on the surface, there was no longer any faction that dared to openly defy the decrees of Shanghai City. Seeing this, Yang Xiuqing tactfully withdrew herself from the government affairs of Tianjin City and handed over all authority to the Marquis. Yang Xiuqing began to hide in her residence and pack her luggage, preparing to head to Lizhou Commandery at any time. On the same day, the Dragon Stallion Army officially completed its sweep of Zhen and Commandery. The next day, Bai Qi began to select a new headquarters for the Dragon Stallion Army, while working with the military office to establish a command department. At the same time, Bai Qi would act as Ouyang Shua's special envoy and contact Zhang Liao to discuss the issue of mutual defense between the two countries, hoping to establish a long-term and effective relationship. The meeting between the two sides was also to clear up misunderstandings and prevent the two armies from accidentally fighting on the border. The Dragon Stallion Army's presence in Zhen and Commandery was like a bolt from the blue to the still-forming Yunnan City. No one would believe that Shanghai City's garrison in Zhen and Commandery was to guard against their ally, Lingxi City. It was obvious what they were aiming for. Earlier, Shanghai City and Lingxi City had joined forces, and in a short period of 3 days, Kunming County had completely changed its banner. Now that the two giants of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had been dealt with, they joined hands again. It was really frightening. The next day, Yunnan City announced the completion of its establishment. Its efficiency was simply astounding. The unexpected fall of Guilin County had a negative impact on Shanghai City's prestige in China. However, no one could deny that Shanghai City, which had annexed 2 more counties, was now a true giant in China. No one could shake its position. Haven't you heard? Although the northern Sichuan province had allied with the southern Xiang city-state to take down Guilin County. After high official Shimen returned, the first thing he did was to contact the various lords of the northern Sichuan province to discuss the matter of establishing a city-state. Especially with Han Xion's army stationed in the withering stronghold to the northern Sichuan province, just Guilin County was enough to make them unable to feel at ease. The establishment of a North Sichuan city-state was imminent. As soon as the news came out, the world was in an uproar. As a result, Shanghai City was surrounded from the west to the east by the city-states of Yunnan, the city-states of northern Sichuan, the city-states of Xiangnan, and the city-states of Lingnan. Who else could it be other than Shanghai City? For a time, the southwest region became the most eye-catching existence in the entire China region. How Shanghai City would break out of the heavy encirclement became a hot topic among the players. Some so-called experts could not bear the loneliness and wrote articles on the forum elaborating on their high opinions. The most accepted view was that Shanghai City would definitely advance westward. This meant that Shanghai City would join forces with their staunch ally, Lingxi City, to first take care of the Yunnan city-state, stabilize their position in the west, and then free up their hands to deal with the other city-states. Such an argument, coupled with the strong presence of the Dragon Stallion army, how could the Yunnan city-state not be frightened? In the coming new year, the lords would probably not have a peaceful time. On the 4th of December, the Emperor Palace was completely demolished. The enormous Emperor Palace was razed to the ground, becoming a thing of the past. At the same time, at the same place, the newly planned government office of Xuanzhou County was officially built. The replacement of the old and the new represented the passing of power from the new to the old. At this point, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom could be considered to have truly come to an end, completely withdrawing from the road of hegemony in the wilderness. That afternoon, the Department of Commerce held a grand auction in the square in front of the Emperor Palace. In less than 2 hours, all the items were auctioned off, and the funds collected were 110,000 gold coins. Among them were merchants who really sold wood, commoners who just happened to need to build residences, and of course, Hong Xiuqiuan's diehard supporters, and so on. The Department of Commerce and the Black Snake Guards cooperated with each other, investigating these buyers one by one, striving not to let any fish slip through the net, and completely wiping out the influence of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom in the two counties. At the same time, the Black Snake Guards had already begun an investigation in the tens of thousands of villages in the two counties. They completely wiped out the act of secretly worshiping the Heavenly King and severely punished those who committed the crime. And all of this was naturally to pave the way for the rule of Shanghai City. As for the funds obtained from the auction, Ouyang Shaw did not invest them in the construction of Xuanzhou County and Jinan County, but used them for the military expenses for the expansion of the territory, including the compensation for those who died during the war. In this way, the capture of the two counties, including the previous Wuzhou County, did not create any additional burden on the territory's finances, which could be considered a blessing from the heavens. With the end of the auction, the Black Snake Guards began to carry out a secret purge within Tianjin City. Those who were previously on the blacklist, whether they were gentry, officials, or common people, would all die a violent death. In just one day, more than 200 people lost their lives. For a moment, it actually caused a commotion within Tianjin City. Ouyang Shua had no choice but to personally appease the commoners, stating that this was only a temporary purge of bandits. Only then did Tianjin City regain some peace. On the 5th of December, Bao Shuya finally arrived in Tianjin City. Cui Shaoxi also came along with Bao Shuya. Cui Shaoxi would stay in Tianjin City for a day, and after a simple debriefing, he would once again set out for Jinan County. 2 days earlier, Mulan Lanyue had already led more than 500 officials, escorted by the 2nd Division of the 1st Legion of the Dragon Stallion Army, to smoothly arrive at Jinan County and officially take over the administration of the county. Accompanying Mulan Lanyue was her personal bodyguard, Li Feishue. It was reported that Li Feishue was preparing to establish a sect in Jinan County and had obtained Mulan Lanyue's full support. Ouyang Shua was naturally happy to see this happen. The next day, Yang Xiuqing, escorted by a group of personal guards, set out for Liizhou County. On the 8th of December, Ouyang Shua departed from Tianjin City. 2 Mountain Barbarian Independent Divisions also left with Ouyang Shua. As for the Imperial Guard Division, they were temporarily left in Tianjin City. Only when the Xuanzhou County Guard Division was established would they set out for Shanghai City. Before this, the Wuzhou County Guard Division had already been established, and the 4th Mountain Barbarian Independent Division stationed in Chiyu City was already on its way back to Shanghai City. Originally, Ouyang Shua had wanted to stay in Tianjin City for a period of time. Unfortunately, a secret letter from the Black Snake Guard forced Ouyang Shua to return to Shanghai City ahead of time. According to the Black Snake Guard's report, they had finally found Fan Li and Shi Shi. On the same day, Bai Shui formally informed the Department of Commerce that her father, Bai Gue, had agreed to move the Bai Clan Merchant Company to Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua would never believe that there was no connection between Fan Li and Bai Gue. Surprisingly, Fan Li did not make things difficult for the Black Snake Guard's invitation. He readily agreed to leave with the Black Snake Guard and settle down in Shanghai City. Given their speed, as long as they reached the nearest royal city, they would be able to quickly teleport to Shanghai City. Thus, Ouyang Shuo had to set out ahead of time and step on the road back. Calculating the time, Ouyang Shuo had left Shanghai City for more than 2 months. It was about time for him to return. On the 12th of December, Ouyang Shuo led his troops to Mulan Fortress. In Mulan Fortress, Ouyang Shuo stayed for a day and had a deep discussion with Du Ruhui. They had a thorough discussion about the specific reorganization of the army and the relevant personnel appointment and dismissal. Du Ruhui was indeed a capable official. In a short period of time, she had refined the rough army reorganization plan that Ouyang Shuo had drawn up a few days ago into a plan of more than 10 pages and tens of thousands of words. She had considered all aspects of the matter. Of course, there was also the assistance of the various departments under the military office. In particular, Zhao Kuo, the chief of operations, had played a greater role in the plan and had become Du Ruhui's most important assistant. The next day, Ouyang Shuo led his troops and left again. Li Xiuqing, Chun Yuqing, Xiao Gui, and Feng Yinshan, the 4 surrendered generals of the Taiping army, left with Ouyang Shuo. These 4 were all stubborn people and had refused to surrender even now. Seeing this, Ouyang Shuo simply brought all of them back to Shanghai City and dealt with them later. On the 15th of December, Ouyang Shuo and his troops successfully arrived at Shanghai City. At the north gate of the city, Xiao led the civil and military officials to kneel to welcome them. Their great momentum shocked the entire Shanghai City. With this, Ouyang Shuo officially announced the return of the king. After returning to Shanghai City, Ouyang Shuo arranged for the 2 mountain barbarian independent divisions to be placed in the barracks of the royal city. After that, he didn't meet with anyone and went straight to the rear hall of the protectorate. After being away from home for several months, Ouyang Shuo naturally missed his family. The cute Binger and the gentle Songjia were both existences that he thought about day and night. It was only at this moment that Ouyang Shuo could temporarily put down his ambitions and truly relax. Chapter 545. Shanghai City, Guanlin Temple. After resting for a day, the first thing Ouyang Shuo did was to revive Wei Zhang at the Guanlin Temple. Fortunately, there was no such thing as rotting corpses in the game. Otherwise, it would have taken 2 months to transport Wei Zhang's corpse from Wuzhou County to Shanghai City. After arriving at Shanghai City, the corpse was placed in the Guanlin Temple. Ouyang Shuo walked into the Guanlin Temple and pressed on one of the general souls. Immediately, he heard the sound of a system notification. System notification: the corpse of a king-class historical general has been detected. It meets the requirements for revival. Would you like to consume a king-class general soul and 3,000 gold coins to revive it? Yes. Ouyang Shuo did not expect that reviving a general would require gold coins in addition to the general's soul. System notification: revival request confirmed. Execute immediately. With a whoosh, a blue spirit light floated out of the general's soul jade pendant. It swayed and found Wei Zhang, who was placed in the front hall. It entered Wei Zhang's mouth and instantly disappeared. At the same time, the general soul jade pendant shattered into 7 or 8 pieces and disappeared. Ouyang Shuo guessed that the so-called blue light was probably something like the 3 souls and 7 spirits. Using the souls of other generals to replace the souls of the deceased generals would probably only appear in the game. If this was put in the real world, he would probably be laughed at by the Taoists. As the spirit light entered his body, Wei Zhang's pale face instantly turned for the better. After a while, Wei Zhang woke up. Marquis. To Wei Zhang, it was as if he had just woken up from a dream. Wei Zhang's memory still stopped at the battlefield. He looked at his surroundings and felt a little strange. Fortunately, Wei Zhang was a fierce general and had great adaptability. When he saw Ouyang Shuo, he instinctively bowed his head. General Wei, you've worked hard. Rest for a few days in Shanghai City before returning. Yes. Wei Zhang nodded. He had completely calmed down. Ouyang Shuo did not need to worry about the rest. After walking out of the Guanlin Temple, Ouyang Shuo walked toward the Southwest University China Hall in the royal city. Even though the wilderness was filled with killing intent, everything was normal in Shanghai City. There was not even a trace of blood-red clouds in the sky. It was blue and clear. All of this was naturally due to the special nature of the territory. Coupled with the blessings of the deities of the Yellow Emperor Temple, Matsu Temple, and the other temples, ordinary evil spirits would not dare to cause trouble in Shanghai City. Because a large number of students had graduated in advance and been sent to Sunzhou County and Jiangnan County to take up posts, the entire academy seemed much more deserted, no longer bustling with activity like before. However, next year's spring enrollment was already underway. Next spring, the various schools of Southwest University China Hall would recruit more than 3,000 students. Among them, there were more than 800 students in the half-year program, and the rest were all one-year students. Ouyang Shuo had come to Southwest University China Hall specifically to visit Jiangshan. Ouyang Shuo's territory had fallen into a situation of being besieged, and he urgently needed a teacher to guide him. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo thought of Jiangshan, Grand Duke Jiang. At this moment in the territory, only the great-grandfather could answer his questions. After taking charge of the Southwest University China Hall, other than the island where he lived in seclusion, Taigong also had a place to stay in the hall to manage the affairs of the hall. As if he had sensed Ouyang Shuo's arrival, great-grandfather purposely waited in his residence. The two of them sat opposite each other in the quiet room. Great-grandfather, what should I do? Ouyang Shuo didn't introduce the current situation of the territory, but went straight to the point. He believed that even though great-grandfather was hidden in the academy, nothing in the world, especially the territory, could escape his discerning eyes. Sure enough, the great-grandfather smiled and slowly spat out a word. Wait. Wait. Hearing this, Ouyang Shuo fell into deep thought. Great-grandfather, you mean to recuperate and temporarily stop fighting? You're worth teaching. Great-grandfather smiled. Is there a time limit? Ouyang Shuo asked. Conquering the wilderness was like rowing a boat against the current. If you didn't advance, you would be pushed back. If you lay dormant for too long, others would probably catch up to you. By that time, it would be too late for you to rise again. Therefore, choosing the right time was especially important. Although Ouyang Shuo was a reincarnator, he was unable to grasp the extent of this. At least half a year, at most a year, and the world will change, great-grandfather said. Half a year to a year. Hearing this, Ouyang Shuo frowned. It had only been 2 years since the game had been running. Now, Shanghai City had to lay dormant for more than half a year. To Ouyang Shuo, it was indeed a difficult decision to make. Too many variables could occur in half a year's time. Ouyang Shuo couldn't predict when Shanghai City's foundation would be able to last more than half a year. Seeing this, great-grandfather didn't say anything and let Ouyang Shuo decide. Great-grandfather, please enlighten me. Ouyang Shuo bowed. He wanted to hear great-grandfather's opinion before making a decision. There are 2 problems with the territory. Seeing this, great-grandfather finally explained to Ouyang Shuo. First, the rapid expansion has caused the territory's foundation to be shallow. Second, there are enemies on the periphery, and they seem to be on the verge of breaking out. Ouyang Shuo nodded. He had a clear understanding of these 2 points. It was just that he didn't have a clear plan on how to break out of the situation. To resist the external attacks, we must first stabilize the internal situation, great-grandfather said bluntly. If Shanghai City wants to break out of the encirclement, the first thing is to strengthen the territory's foundation. With a stable foundation, there's nothing to fear. But what is the current situation? Speaking up to this point, great-grandfather's expression became serious for the first time. He said, Wu Prefecture, Sun Prefecture, and Jiangnan Prefecture are deeply poisoned by religion. They won't be able to recover in a short period of time. We must diligently improve our governance and win back the people's hearts. Although Thunder Prefecture and Zhaoqing Prefecture don't have any major problems, there are still small problems. We must prioritize development. Jingzhou Prefecture looks prosperous, but it's actually concentrated in Cliff Mountain City. The other regions aren't developed enough. Lianzhou Prefecture is the territory's foundation. For the past year, the Marquis has been busy fighting outside and neglected to pay attention to the foundation. The people have been longing for the Marquis's kindness for a long time. Hearing this, Ouyang Shua couldn't help but sweat. Originally, after Mulan Yue and Bao Xia took up their posts, Ouyang Shua felt pretty good about the territory of the 7 counties. He felt that everything was on the right track. Unexpectedly, after great-grandfather's comment, there were many problems. There's another problem. The Marquis has just completed his hegemony. Not to mention leaving behind an heir, even the position of his wife is still undecided. The people of the territory are already worried about this. Great-grandfather raised another problem. Song Jia is the wife I've chosen. Why does great-grandfather say that it's still undecided? Ouyang Shua didn't understand. Great-grandfather shook his head. Since it's the Marquis's choice, he should announce it to the world so that the people of the territory can share this joyous event with the Marquis. He should let the people of the territory feel at ease. Great-grandfather, are you saying that we should hold a grand wedding to officially establish Song Jia's status? Ouyang Shua asked. That's right. Great-grandfather nodded. Good. Then let's hold the wedding before the end of the year. At that time, please preside over the wedding, great-grandfather, Ouyang Shua said. After hearing great-grandfather's words, Ouyang Shua also felt that it was time to give Song Jia an official status. Yesterday, the two of them talked about their feelings when they parted. Ouyang Shua already felt that he owed Song Jia a lot. The two of them spent less time together and more time apart. Ouyang Shua became colder and colder. This was extremely unfair to Song Jia. Yes. Great-grandfather smiled. How do we recuperate? Ouyang Shua asked again. Rule by doing nothing, great-grandfather said. What do you mean? Ouyang Shua didn't understand. Rule by doing nothing was really incompatible with the environment of the wilderness. However, since great-grandfather had brought it up, there must be a reason. Moreover, it was the result of his careful consideration. Great-grandfather smiled. The one who does nothing is none other than the Marquis himself. Please explain clearly, great-grandfather. Ouyang Shua asked. Within the territory, whether it's the military or the government, there is actually no lack of peerless talents. The only regret is that the Marquis has led the development of the entire territory, which limits their ability to display. This is the biggest waste of talent. In fact, the territory does not lack talents who can take charge. What we lack is to stimulate their individual talents. When Ouyang Shua heard this, he was really startled. Ever since he built the village, Ouyang Shua was used to planning a blueprint for the territory according to his previous life's experience. Whether it was the structure of the military or the government, the appointment and removal of personnel, or even the specific policies, they were all decided by Ouyang Shua alone. Whether it was Xiao Hifan Zhongyan, Wei Yong, the other civil officials, or by Qi, Hanexin, Duruhui, and the other military officials, although they were peerless talents under Ouyang Shua's command, they always played the role of executors. This was something that a wise ruler would not do. Thus, when Ouyang Shua could no longer use his previous life's experience to guide him forward, he was at a loss. At the same time, Ouyang Shua subconsciously wasn't willing to relinquish his authority and allowed his subordinates to do as they pleased. He was used to having everything planned out in advance. It seemed like Ouyang Shua was doing his duty, but in fact, he was monopolizing power and limiting his subordinates. In the long run, the territory would be in danger. A long time ago, Ouyang Shua had been worried about this problem and had even taken it as a warning. He did not expect that when he looked back, he would actually repeat the same mistake. The affairs of the world were so mysterious. It was only at this moment that great-grandfather reminded Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua stood up again and respectfully bowed to great-grandfather like a student. How do we break the momentum? Ouyang Shua asked again. It will collapse on its own. Great-grandfather said, the reason the enemy is afraid of is that Shanghai City is too aggressive and unfriendly to the surrounding forces, making them feel threatened. It's like a wolf suddenly appearing in a flock of sheep. In order to not be eaten by the wolf, the sheep naturally have to gather together. However, once the wolf restrains its wolf nature and goes into hibernation, can a sheep still gather together? No. Ouyang Shua's eyes lit up. Great-grandfather said with a smile, "That's right. In the wilderness, there are no truly harmless sheep. Even if they're truly harmless, they still need to eat grass." Thus, once the wolf pack retreats, the seemingly harmless sheep will turn into ferocious wild goats and fight each other. When that time comes, it will be Shanghai City's opportunity. It's time for the Chamberlain of Dependencies established by the Marquis to display its power. I've learned something. Ouyang Shua could not help but exclaim in admiration. Chapter 546. Jiangshang used the relationship between wolves and sheep to vividly analyze the relationship between Shanghai City and the surrounding territories. Ouyang Shua's heart brightened up after Tai Gong's reminder. A huge plan was slowly forming in his mind. Of course, all the plans had to be carried out after the new year. Especially before the arrival of the third year of Gaia, Ouyang Shua wanted to take advantage of the remaining half a month to settle some trivial matters. First and foremost was the establishment of the Imperial Guard Corps. When the Dragon Stallion Army had gone to Zhenan County, two mountain barbarian generals had done the exact opposite. They had separated from a main army and been transferred back to Shanghai City to await further orders. They were Lei Jingtian and Shi Bao, both of them relatively outstanding young commanders in the mountain barbarians. This was especially true for Lei Jingtian. Not only did he receive Ouyang Shua's attention, but he also received a strong recommendation from his superior, Eli. After leaving the Southwest University China Hall, Ouyang Shua turned around and headed for the Royal City Military Camp to officially announce the establishment of the Imperial Guard Corps. Not only were there only 4 divisions in the newly formed Imperial Guard Corps, even the corps position of Corps Commander was temporarily vacant, and Ouyang Shua was personally in charge of it. Lin Yi's division was renamed the 1st Division of the Royal Guards. At the same time, Ouyang Shua also officially designated this division as a pure cavalry division. The Mountain Barbarian 2nd Independent Division, led by Shi, who was renamed the Forbidden Army 2nd Division, becoming the Mountain Barbarians Heavy Infantry Division. Seizing this opportunity, Shi, who officially assumed the position of division commander. The Mountain Barbarian Independent 3rd Division was renamed the Forbidden Army 3rd Division, and was also a Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division. Ouyang Shua chose Lei Jingtian as the division commander. The Mountain Barbarian Independent 4th Division was renamed the 4th Division of the Imperial Guard Corps, which was the Armored Beast Heavy Cavalry Division that had been planned for a long time. The regiment commander was naturally the Li tribe's #1 warrior, Shanju. The Mountain Barbarian General Shi Bao was appointed as the deputy commander of the 4th Division. With Shi Bao's assistance, Mountain Pillar was able to smoothly take over the Mountain Barbarian soldiers. In the Rhinoceros Valley of Cheongzhou County, the first batch of 5,000 ironbacks had arrived at Shanghai City. The armor workshop was also speeding up the forging of the armor and equipment, and it would be completed in a few days. The Ironback troop was a new type of soldier, and there had been no precedent of a large-scale troop formation. Thus, how to train these troops into shape was the biggest problem for Shanju, the division commander. The first problem was how to tame the Ironback beast. The art of taming horses in China had a long history. Therefore, there was no problem with taming war horses. The Ironback beast was different. It was a wild beast that was more advanced than war horses, and it was difficult to train. In addition, due to their bloodline, war horses were naturally adapted to the hustle and bustle of the battlefield and had great endurance. As for the Ironback beast, it was an unknown. Fortunately, the major problems, including the feeding problem of the iron-armored beasts, had been solved by Xiaoho Ying, the director of the discipline department. The only difficult thing was to make the Ironbacks recognize the barbarian warriors. For this reason, Shanju had no choice but to ask for help from the tribe, transferring more than 30 beast tamers to assist the barbarian warriors in taming the iron armor beasts. making them their most loyal and reliable partners. The people of the Li clan lived on Jingzhou Island and knew the habits of the iron-armored beasts on the island best. In the tribe, there were occasionally tamed iron-armored beasts to replace cattle or pack horses. Therefore, each tribe, more or less, had one or two capable people who could train iron-armored beasts. This time, Shanju used his identity as the young master of the Li clan to sweep away these capable people and invited them all to Shanghai City. For the Li clan, Shanju could hold a high position in the army of Shanghai City, which was also a kind of consolation and honor. Therefore, after receiving Shanju's request, the tribes responded positively. In addition, Ouyang Shua's savage taming art had to be mentioned. Ouyang Shua would spend 2 days alone to use this savage taming art to tame every iron-armor beast. Otherwise, even with the help of the beast tamers of the Li clan, it would be of no help. In order to train the iron-armor beast troops into an army, the military office even specially divided out a plot of land on the grassland in the northern suburbs outside the city and built a large training ground. The Iron-Armor Beast Division would spend the next 3 months in the training ground. Even the routine training arrangements of the Special Operations Base had been specially approved by Ouyang Shaw, so they could temporarily not participate. As for the vacant 5th Division, when the time was right, another division would be formed. The biggest difference between the establishment of the Imperial Guard Corps this time and the previous one was that there were no soldiers drawn from other divisions, and it was completely reorganized from the 3 independent mountain barbarian divisions. From this, it could be seen that Ouyang Shua approved of the mountain barbarian warriors. Ouyang Shua's trust in the mountain barbarian warriors was closely related to his identity as the barbarian king. He was confident that this group of mountain barbarian warriors would be his most loyal guards, and they would follow him to battle on the battlefield. Taking this opportunity, he could further deepen the recognition of the mountain barbarian tribe toward the territory. From then on, the 3 mountain barbarian independent divisions would have official designations, and they would become the trump card troops of the territory in one leap. Next, they would collectively enter the Special Operations Training Base and receive a month of special training to make up for this missing lesson. Ouyang Shua hoped that the mountain barbarian warriors would not only be brave, but also sufficiently smart. After all, warriors who only knew how to use brute force would not amount to much. Unlike other corps, the Imperial Guard Corps temporarily did not have a direct brigade. For the current Imperial Guard Corps, the 3,000 Divine Guards were the strongest direct troops. After dealing with the Imperial Guard Corps, Ouyang Shua took the opportunity to meet Li Xiuqing and the other 3 generals of the Taiping army in the military camp. When they were captured, Li Xiuqing and the others were prepared to die a heroic death. However, with the death of the emperor, Tianjin City surrendered, and the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom completely became history. Their hearts suddenly became empty, and they lost all their pursuits in an instant. It suddenly seemed silly to say that they were going to die a heroic death. After all, the lord and the dynasty they had been loyal to no longer existed. After Shi Dakai left, Yang Xiuqing surrendered and successfully became the county governor of Liezhou County. The 4 generals of the Taiping army were even more at a loss. It should be noted that Shi and Yang were 2 symbolic figures among the generals of the Taiping army. Obviously, the 2 of them did not show any hostility toward Shanghai City. Otherwise, Shi Dakai would not have handed over his military power so easily and withdrawn from that battle. Apart from that, the 4 of them were not mistreated during their capture. Instead, Shanghai City treated them with great courtesy. The only thing that shocked them was probably the scene of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom that they learned from Shanghai City. This was a huge blow to Li Xiuqing and the others. The tragic experience of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom in history, as well as their personal experiences, undoubtedly caused the faith that they had built up with great difficulty to collapse in an instant. Unlike the people of Xuanzhou County, these people had only come into contact with the God-worshipping religion in the wilderness. They had not had the chance to attack the dark, backward, and ignorant side of the religion. Therefore, The people of the two counties were still grateful to heavenly King Hong Xiuquan. Li Xiuqing and the others had appeared in the wilderness with Hong Xiuquan. The idea that Gaia had instilled in them was to follow this man and make a name for themselves in the wilderness for the welfare of the people. Therefore, it was difficult for Li Xiuqing and the others to accept the truth of history. It was this bit of information that made Li Xiuqing and the others' resistance to Shanghai City grow weaker and weaker. However, it seemed that something was missing if they really wanted to pledge their loyalty to Shanghai City. When Ouyang Shua passed by Milan Fortress and expressed his intention to bring the four of them back to Shanghai City, they did not refuse. Similarly, Ouyang Shua did not treat them as captives. They were like ordinary generals in the army, free to come and go as they pleased. The only difference was that they did not have specific positions. It was this opportunity that gave Li Xiuqing and the others the opportunity to observe the army of Shanghai City at close range. With this observation, it was naturally obvious who was superior. From Milan Fortress, they passed through Mulan Prefecture and Bless Prefecture. The people's lives in these two prefectures once again brought them great shock. Developed commerce, highly efficient yamen, affluent people, and a complete welfare system. No matter what it was a shock to their already fragile nerves. It was as if Shanghai City was the ideal world that the Heavenly King had described and yearned for. This feeling was really strange. The ambition that they wanted to realize had actually been realized in the enemy's territory. When they arrived at Shanghai City, the shock it brought was even greater. The lofty and majestic city, reasonable urban planning, more developed commerce, more affluent people, more efficient yamen, more graceful atmosphere. All of these showed that this was a city full of vitality and was full of heritage. In comparison, Tianjin City seemed to be a little dilapidated on the inside. When they entered Tianjin City, Li Xiuqing and the others were somewhat infatuated with this majestic and magnificent city. Therefore, when they received Ouyang Shua, everything seemed to be going smoothly. What surprised Li Xiuqing and the others was that Ouyang Shua didn't intend to let them return to the army directly. Ouyang Shua wanted Li Xiuqing and the other three to be sent to the military lecture hall for 3 months of further training. After 3 months, the army would basically be organized, and it would be just in time for them to go to their posts. There was no doubt that Li Xiuqing and the other 3 Taiping army generals were talented. Otherwise, they wouldn't have grown up to be great generals one by one in the history of the world. The only thing they lacked was that they hadn't received formal military education. Entering the military lecture hall would undoubtedly help them make up for their shortcomings. In addition to the 4 surrendered generals, the Military Affairs Office would also select 1,000 team leaders, 300 battalion commanders, 50 brigade commanders, and even 5 division commanders from all the generals in the army to be sent to the military lecture hall for further training. Ouyang Shua wanted to take this opportunity to improve the level of the generals in the army. This was only the first batch. 3 months later, there would be a second batch of generals sent to the military lecture hall for further training. Half a year later, all the generals in the army would be trained in rotation. Obviously, Ouyang Shua had accepted the dormant plan proposed by Jiang Shang. Chapter 547, Southern Border Protectorate, Southern Study Room. On the 3rd day of Ouyang Shua's return to Shanghai City, he finally found some time to meet ancestor Shang Bai Gui. Accompanying Bai Gui was his daughter, Wei Yang's wife Bai Shui. Bai Clan Trading Company moved to Shanghai City. Other than the assistants, shopkeepers, and skilled people like Shui Clan Trading Company, there was another group of people that were special. They were Bai Gui's disciples. There were more than 100 of them. Bai Gui was the first person to accept disciples. Through strict selection, he accepted a few students. He had a high threshold for accepting disciples. He once said, "My management of production is like Yi Yin and Liu Shangji's schemes. Sun Wu's military is like Shang's methods. Thus, their intelligence is insufficient. Their courage is insufficient. Their benevolence is insufficient, and their borders cannot be defended. Although they wish to learn my skills, they do not tell me. During the Warring States period, merchants were the last in the division of scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants. Merchants had always had a low status in China's history. However, Bai Guwei used the highest moral standards of that time as a basic requirement for merchants. He equated the importance of economics with politics and military. It could be seen that the businessman that Bai Guwei was looking for was someone with a very high level of education and noble moral character. This was in line with his business philosophy of taking benevolence as the foundation. Because of this, Bai Guwei won the title of Ancestor Shang. I'm gratified that old Mr. Bai is able to move by Clan Trading Company to Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua said, I came for profit. Bai Guwei was magnanimous and did not lose his character as a merchant. Ouyang Shua heard this and smiled. He did not believe that Bai Guwei's motive would be so simple. To the current Bai Guwei, wealth and such were probably already insignificant things. What Bai Guwei was truly worried about was the status of Shang clan. This was something that Ouyang Shua had figured out later on. Because of this, Ouyang Shua was confident. Old Mister's knowledge is as vast as the ocean. Isn't it a waste of talent to only pursue profit? Ouyang Shua smiled. Bai Guwei heard this, and his eyes lit up in understanding. From the looks of it, his intuition was right. This strange lord in front of him was indeed extraordinary. The two smiled and immediately formed a tacit understanding. This caused Bai Shui, who was sitting at the side, to feel puzzled. Old Mister should have heard of Southwest University China Hall. Ouyang Shua changed the topic. I've long heard of it. I've been fascinated by it for a long time. Bai Guwei's expression became more and more joyous. In this world, there was nothing more joyous than meeting someone who understood you. Bai Guwei found Guwei to Ouyang Shua more pleasing to the eye. If he had known this would happen, he and family wouldn't have made such an unnecessary move. In Southwestern University, there's a school called the Business School that specializes in business. The position of the head of the academy had always been vacant. This is a great legacy of mine. I wonder if old Mister is willing to accept it? Ouyang Shua threw out his chips. Shua Tian Guwei said, Hall, Guwei, and Bai Guwei laughed. This was because the current Southwest Great Hall had long since become the core of the 100 Schools of Thought's holy land of learning. Ancestor of 100 schools, Jiang Shang. The leaders of School of Economics, School of Physics, School of Law, and School of Agriculture were all representatives of the schools. Once Bai Guwei became schoolmaster, it would mean that 100 schools of thought would enter the mainstream. How could Bai Guwei, who wanted to bring Shang clan to greater heights, not be excited? Ouyang Shua made this arrangement because he saw through it. In the afternoon, Ouyang Shua officially appointed Bai Guwei as Dean of Southwest University China Hall Schoolmaster. The moment Bai Guwei officially entered the School of Business, a system announcement spread throughout China. System announcement: Bai Guwei, representative of Shang clan, has become an official in Shanghai territory. He is now in charge of schoolmaster and has accepted disciples. At the same time, he has fulfilled the 3 conditions for a sect to enter. System announcement: Shang clan of 100 Schools of Thought has officially entered Shanghai City. Shanghai City is given the title of Shang Sacred Land. Congratulations to player, don't say you have no clothes. Originally, the 2 system announcements had ended. Unexpectedly, another system announcement sounded. System announcement: Shang clan of 100 Schools of Thought has officially entered Shanghai City. Shanghai City's title of 100 Schools of Thought has been replaced with Shang Sacred Land. The title reward of Shang Sacred Land has been cancelled. Shanghai City is given a hidden building, Silver Wish Tower, as a reward. Congratulations to player, don't say you have no clothes. Once the announcement was made, the world was in an uproar. For other territories, obtaining the title of 100 Schools of Thought's Sacred Land was already a joyous occasion. Who would have thought that Shanghai City was so generous that even a sacred land title would not be able to gain a foothold in a territory's title? Such dominance. It was truly invincible. Ouyang Shua smiled when he saw this. From the looks of it, when other 100 Schools of Thought enter Shanghai City in the future, they would be given a hidden building as a reward. Just thinking about it made him excited. Following the announcement, a 4-story treasure tower was automatically created at the side of the recruitment hall. The entire tower was filled with jewels and treasures. It was extremely wealthy and made people sigh. West Temple. Every detail of the building was related to wealth. The ground was made of bronze, the foundation was made of fine iron, and the walls were made of high-quality wood. Bat sculptures and copper coins could be seen everywhere. Every floor of the treasure tower had a theme. The first floor was a bunch of rice, which symbolized the source of wealth from agriculture. The second floor was a large scale, which symbolized the accumulation of wealth through circulation. The third floor was a copper coin, which symbolized the source of wealth through currency. The fourth floor was a tael of silver, which symbolized the source of wealth through money. At the top of the tower was a gold ingot the size of a wash basin. It was especially eye-catching, which symbolized the source of wealth. Of course, the core function of the treasure tower was to pray. Name: Silver Wish Tower. Type: hidden building. Function: can make a wish once every 6 months. Characteristics: merchant attraction rate increased by 20, territory popularity increased by 5. Description: this is a treasure tower specially built for making wishes. Every 6 months, the Lord can spend a certain amount of gold coins to enter the silver tower to make a wish. The amount of gold coins required is proportional to the difficulty of the wish. Every time the wish function is activated, the minimum cost is 10,000 gold coins, and the maximum is 100,000 gold coins. If the Lord's wish exceeds 100,000 gold coins, the wish will automatically become invalid. At the same time, 10,000 gold coins will be deducted. At the same time, the number of wishes for this time will also be used up. Therefore, the Silver Wish Tower was not omnipotent. It had very strong restrictions. Even so, it was still an amazing hidden building. Wishes such as praying for good weather in the coming year were relatively easy to fulfill. Chapter 548. If you wanted to understand the usage of the Silver Wish Tower, Ouyang Shua had to personally test it out. Walking into the Silver Wish Tower, there was a console in the middle of the hall on the first floor, just like the recruitment hall. Ouyang Shua walked over and clicked on it. The system notification sounded in his ears. System notification: congratulations to player who has no clothes for unlocking the Silver Wish Tower. The first time you unlock the tower, you will automatically receive a chance to make a wish. Do you wish to make a wish? Yes. System notification: please select the type of wish. In an instant, 5 options appeared on the console. The first option's icon was the rice on the first floor, which represented the agriculture type wish. The following options were clearly defined. The second floor scale represented the business type wish. The third floor's copper coins represented the culture type wish. The fourth floor's silver represented the technology type wish, and the top floor's gold ingots represented the other types. The higher the level, the harder the wish was, and the more gold it required. Ouyang Shua thought for a moment and chose the simplest agriculture type wish. System notification: wish type confirmed. Please select wish mode. Friendly reminder: there are 2 types of wish mode. One is a custom wish, the other is a random wish. A custom wish was easy to understand. It was to directly state the wish you wanted to fulfill. The prerequisite was that it had to match the current type, and at the same time, it did not exceed the limit of 100,000 gold, otherwise it would be ineffective. For example, Ouyang Shua chose the agriculture type wish. He could pray for the next year's climate, the growth of crops, the fertility of the land, and other related contents. The advantage of a custom wish was that it had a strong focus. The disadvantage was that because he could not control the difficulty of the wish, it was very likely to exceed the limit of 100,000 gold, and he would waste a chance to make a wish. After thinking for a moment, Ouyang Shua decided to first test out the random wish. The advantage of random wishes was that all wishes had a 100% chance of being fulfilled. Select random wish. System notification: wish mode confirmed. Wishing officially begins. Just as he finished speaking, Ouyang Shua saw the familiar compass. On the virtual compass, there were 24 wishes. Each wish was labeled with a corresponding amount, ranging from 10,000 to 100,000 gold coins. Among them, the 10,000 gold wish was naturally the simplest. Ouyang Shua took a look. There were wishes to increase the fertility of the soil by 5, or increase the rainfall by 8. Above that, there were other benefits, such as increasing the output of crops by 5, increasing the amount of sunlight in the territory by 10, increasing the resistance of crops to pests by 10, reducing the difficulty of farming by 10, and so on. In addition, each category had different percentages, which corresponded to different amounts. Ouyang Shua made a rough calculation. No matter which wish he fulfilled, the economic benefits of the following year would be far greater than the gold coins he spent on the wish. In other words, unless the wish failed, it was a guaranteed profit. The more gold coins spent on praying, the greater the return. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shua regretted choosing the simplest agriculture wish. All the wishes had one thing in common, and that was that the time limit of the wish was only 1 year. After a year, the blessing from wishes would completely disappear. Such a setting was reasonable. Otherwise, it would be too heaven-defying. As the prayer began, the compass began to slowly spin. As Ouyang Shua observed, the needle on the compass was spinning slower and slower, and it seemed like it was about to stop. Ouyang Shua had no control over the stop of the needle. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called a random wish. There were a total of 3 wishes on the position the needle stopped at. In order, increase the fertility of the soil by 5, cost 10,000 gold coins. Increase the resistance of crops to pests by 15, cost 30,000 gold coins. And increase the output of crops by 15, cost 100,000 gold coins. Seeing this, Ouyang Shua's heart was in his throat. Even a fool would know that the third wish was the most valuable. With just 100,000 gold coins, it could increase the output of crops in the territory by 15. Even with the current scale of agriculture in the territory, it could at least generate 500,000 gold coins in income. One must know that the so-called crops did not only refer to rice, but also cotton, peanuts, rapeseed, potatoes, mulberry trees, and so on. With the scale of agriculture in the territory of 7 counties, it was easy to imagine that an increase of output by 15 would be a huge number. From this, it was not difficult to understand why the characteristics of the territory became more and more useful in the later stages. In the blink of an eye, the needle had already passed the first wish and was moving on the second wish grid. But looking at the momentum of the needle, it was almost exhausted and was about to stop at the second grid. Just a little more, just a little more. Ouyang Shua could not help but mutter to himself, as if he was encouraging the needle. The slowly moving needle, as if it had gone through a century, still turned into an old man. Although it was difficult for him to move, it was still moving forward bit by bit. It looked like it was about to completely pass the second grid and was only a short distance away from the third grid. Ouyang Shua's heart was in his throat once again. Just a little more, just a little more. Unfortunately, the needle seemed to have exhausted all of its momentum and could not move any further. Finally, the needle actually stopped at the junction of the second and third grid. Ouyang Shua could not help but be dumbfounded when he saw this. How do I determine this? Luckily, the system quickly gave him an answer. System notification. Congratulations, player not have clothes. You have drawn the agriculture type which increased the resistance of crops to pests in the territory by 15. 30,000 gold coins will be automatically deducted. Friendly reminder. The duration of this wish is from Gaia Year 3, January 1st, to Gaia Year 3, December 30th. When Ouyang Shua heard this, his face could not help but turn black. Holy sh**t. Ouyang Shua could not help but ridicule his source of fortune, attribute once again. Even with the blessing of the entire territory, it was still so lousy. If it were Binger, Ouyang Shua was 100% sure that the system would determine that the third wish was effective and not the second. His face was so black. He was really unlucky no matter where he went. Ouyang Shua covered his face and let out a sigh. The next time he wanted to make a wish, he had to bring Binger, the super invincible lucky star. Thankfully, it was already the middle of December. According to the time pattern of the hidden building, it would automatically reset to 0 on the 1st of January. That was to say, in another half a month, Ouyang Shuo would be able to make a second wish and not have to wait for another half a year. And by then, Ouyang Shuo would be able to enter the recruitment hall again to recruit historical figures. He did not know which hero he would be able to recruit this year. Chapter 549. After coming out of the Silver Prayer Tower, Ouyang Shuo turned around and left Royal City, heading towards the Southern District. The Southern District was the military zone after the expansion. The 7th Research Institute was located there. It had been a month since the Black Snake Guards found the Ming Dynasty firearms manufacturing technical manual from the Emperor Palace. He wondered how Liu Mo and the others were doing with the manual. After returning to Shanghai City, Ouyang Shuo naturally had to inspect it. Firearms represented the highest level of technology in the future and the main direction of attack. There were 2 main types of firearms in the Ming Dynasty. The first type was the handheld firearms and muskets. Their size and caliber were relatively small. Usually, the barrels were filled with lead and iron bullets, and their range was only tens of steps to 200 steps. Converted to meters, the furthest they could go was 200 to 300 meters. Among the firearms, the more representative ones included the three-eyed gun, chain gun, crutch gun, thunderbolt gun, Five Thunders divine armament, Lumi gun, and so on. Among them, one had to mention the crutch gun. The crutch gun was a continuous firing musket with a crank. It was 375 centimeters long and used a loading method similar to the Franco machine. It could fire 3 times in a row and had a range of 150 meters. In the Ming Dynasty, it was known as the victorious Franco machine. It could be said that the crutch gun was the closest to the firearms of the West. The second type was the cannons that were mounted on a stand. Most of the barrels were filled with stone, lead, iron, and so on. They were commonly known as solid bullets. A small number of them were filled with explosive pellets. Their range was usually a few hundred steps to 2 to 3 miles. They were mainly used to defend strongholds and siege cities. They were also used in field battles, water battles, and sea battles. Hong Xiuquan had previously focused on the second type of cannons. The cannons of Tianjin City had all been transported to Shanghai City for the 7th Research Institute to study. The more representative cannons of the Ming Dynasty included the Crouching Tiger Cannon, Franco machine, and the Hongyi Cannon. Among them, the Hongyi Cannon was known as the General Cannon. It was manufactured at the end of the Ming Dynasty with the introduction of Western technology. It had barrel ears and a sighting device that could adjust the range. The cannon had a long lifespan. The large cannon weighed 16 tons and could reach a range of 19 kilometers. Other than firearms and cannons, there was another type of firearm, which was the rocket. It included cluster rockets, fire crows, fire dragons, and so on. The divine fire crow was a crow filled with gunpowder. The gunpowder was connected to the gunpowder in the gunpowder barrel of the rocket. When it was launched, the gunpowder line of the rocket was first ignited, causing the rocket to fly towards the enemy, and then the gunpowder inside the crow's body would be detonated, killing and burning the enemy's men and horses. It was a powerful weapon for breaking formations and sieging cities. Fire Dragon out of water, as the name suggested, was a sharp weapon in water battles. It was a multi-stage rocket from the Ming Dynasty. The first stage of the rocket was tied to a paper paste tube, and the second stage of the rocket was attached to the dragon's mouth. After it was launched, it would increase the range of the rocket to hit the enemy's ships. It was used for attacks on water, and the range could reach up to 15 kilometers. It seemed that the firearms of the Ming Dynasty were extremely developed and very comprehensive. They could all be used in actual combat. However, compared to the West at the same time, they were much weaker. First, let's talk about guns. The three-eyed blunderbuss was the mainstream blunderbuss of the Ming Dynasty. However, its true killing range was less than 10 meters. It was only strong within a distance of 2 feet. Furthermore, it was not accurate at all. It could only be used as a club for hand-to-hand combat if it missed its target. As for the Gizi blunderbuss mentioned earlier, it was a gun imported from the West during the Ming Dynasty. Unfortunately, it was limited by the level of technology at that time, and basically could not be imitated. Even if the imitation was successful, its safety and power would be greatly reduced. First and foremost, it was the materials. Take metallurgy, for example. The Chinese used pig iron and wrought iron very little, and the barrel of the gun had to be forged with wrought iron or steel. This made it extremely difficult for the Chinese, and in the end, they had no choice but to give up. This problem had long been solved in Shanghai City. Before Ouyang Shuo left Shanghai City, he had already started to arrange for the steel industry. Up until now, the 10 steel mills that he had planned had all been completed and put into operation. Every month, the finance department spent a huge amount of gold coins to purchase millions of tons of iron ore and coal, which was enough to support the production needs of the steel mills. As for the cannons, due to the tragedy of metallurgy, the so-called crouching tiger cannon's barrel was incomparably thick. It could only shoot a stone ball the size of a billiard ball 100 meters away. There was no way to adjust the distance, and it didn't even have a wheel. The divine weapon, Frank, was a small cannon used on the small merchant ships of the West. It was called a toy for sailors without actual combat ability, but became an amazing firearm in the Ming Dynasty. For the Ming Dynasty, the Frank was a super high-tech product that surpassed the technological capabilities of the country. Without the guidance of foreigners, they couldn't even produce it. Moreover, the domestic Frank often exploded, and the number of people killed by the explosion far exceeded the number of enemies killed by the explosion. It could be said to be a complete and utter tragedy. At the end of the Ming Dynasty, Western technology was imported, and the imitation of the Red Barbarian cannon was the strongest firearm in the entire Ming Dynasty. In essence, there was no difference between the Red Barbarian cannon and the Frank, except that it was longer and bigger. On the other hand, the standard of casting large cannons in the Ming Dynasty was very low, and the quality was terrible. The large cannons that were cast were often cracked waste. Therefore, they had to ask foreigners for help before they could gradually cast the cannon successfully. However, the quality was still poor, so the cannon's barrel was extremely thick. The Red Barbarian cannon cast in the Ming Dynasty was more than 2 meters long. At that time, it was considered a huge cannon, and it was said to have a range of 10 li, but in reality, it was only about 1 li. In comparison, the super mobile cannon cast by the Mongolian Ming Dynasty was 3 meters tall, 20 meters long, weighed 50 tons, and had a range of more than 20 kilometers. Between the two, there was no comparison at all. Therefore, after Ouyang Shuo obtained the Ming Dynasty Firearm Manufacturing Technical Manual, he didn't even think about manufacturing the various firearms in the manual one by one. Although it wasn't difficult for the current Shanghai City to achieve this goal, it wasn't difficult at all. What Ouyang Shuo wanted was to use the Ming Dynasty Firearm Manufacturing Technical Manual as a blueprint and combine it with Shanghai City's current scientific research capabilities to upgrade and modify firearms. His first goal was to develop a firearm that could catch up with the West's average standard and a new cannon that matched it. That was all. As for other firearms, rockets, and the like, Ouyang Shuo really didn't have the mood to think about them. Only by doing this, Ouyang Shuo could lead the China region in the future war and not repeat the humiliating tragedies of history because of the huge gap in weapons and equipment. In order to achieve this, Shanghai City had to build a set of relatively complete industrial system. Building a steel factory was only the most basic step in the industrial system. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.